Hello, everyone. Welcome to A Fistful of Dice. My name is Matt, and you are watching a playtest of Oath of the Frozen King, a new product coming from Absolute Tabletop. If you're interested in the product, you can check a link down in the description, or the dungeon, as the carnies say. There's a link down there to our Kickstarter project, which we're using to fund art and layout for this adventure kit. Go check it out, see what you think. And if you're looking to see it in action, that's what's going to be going on here tonight. I'm going to be running it using the Black Hack, which is just this, it's just this wonderful little RPG that I've recently become enamored with, and don't tell 5th edition, but I'm seeing it quite a bit, and this should be a lot of fun. So I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves, and we'll go from there. So we'll go ahead and start from my left to right, and we'll go ahead and start with Hankering for an Ale.
It's me under here. Hey everybody, it's Hankering. Excited to play some of the new hotness here. Black Hack is pretty cool. And if you haven't hooked up with the Kickstarter, go do it. Do it now. Oh no, Arnold is already seeping in. I didn't even get through my intro. Anyways, it's good to be here. Excited to play a rogue. I haven't played a rogue in ages, so it should be really cool. I can do my, hey guys, kind of thing. So I'm ready to go.
Awesome, man. Okay, Jeff, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Doty. I have a YouTube channel called Encounterbalance. If you're interested, go ahead and check that out. Super excited for this game. I started checking out the Black Hack as soon as Matt posted about it, and I'm like in love with this system, and I haven't even played it yet. Like, it just seems like I love D&D and I love rules light, so this is perfect. And obviously excited to be in a playtest for the Oath as well. So yeah, this should be a great game. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right, Jeremy, go ahead.
Hey everybody, this is Jeremy. I have a YouTube channel. It's under my name. Good luck finding it. You have to search my name, Jeremy, the first name. The last name is Lilley. Or hopefully you can hear me under this. Not, dude, I'm super pumped about this. You said rules light and super casual, so you know I'm wearing my dwarven lingerie because I'm playing a dwarven cleric. So I'm ready to rock this bedroom.
Awesome, man. I'm glad that I didn't notice that until the big screen popped up with you talking. I was like, whoa, what the heck? Oh, that's so perfect. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get rolling here. Like I said, if you like what you see while we're running this game, you can check out the Oath of the Frozen King Kickstarter. The link is down in the description. We just hit $20,000 today. It's insane. So I'm going to play some D&D to try to make sense of what's going on here. So the dreams have been incessant. They've always been there, as long as you can remember, at least, ever since you were a kid. Every night, ice, cold, a skeletal visage, a strange whispering voice, and always the entrance, the maw of black ice. Lately, though, the dreams have become insistent, always prodding you, visiting you in the day during your waking hours like they have never done before. They've become more real, tangible. You can smell them, feel them. You wake up every morning freezing, the sweat on your body like ice. The three of you have come together through various mercenary jobs, tavern tales. You all became aware of the fact that you shared these dreams, much like you shared the rings that you all carry. Those simple silver bands with the gemstone like black ice, never melting. The three of you now stand before the maw of black ice. You've never seen it in person before. It stretches up in front of you, this soaring pillar of crystalline obsidian. It's freezing, and even though the sun is high in the sky and it's clear, it does not weep, it does not melt. It is forever cold, much like the gemstones in your rings. As you approach the Mauve black ice and you see for the first time that entrance, that doorway that you have seen so many times before, you become aware that it's eerily quiet. No wind, even. And then you see the corpses. 2 of them, sprawled out across the snow with crimson blood splattered. 2 men dressed in the leathers of Varnholm, their throats torn out. What do the 3 of you do as you see these bodies?
Maroon has not really noticed the silence because the sound of his own heartbeat in his ears is completely dominating that sense of his. So the lack of wind doesn't really catch his attention. But whenever they spot the 2 bodies, it definitely does. And he rushes over to them, kind of slipping on the ice and going down onto his knees or his shins and kind of sliding up to the closest one of them as he drops his mace down beside him and starts to examine him to see if he can determine what was the cause of death.
Go ahead and give me a wisdom test, please.
Okay, my wisdom is a 15, and I got a 15 on the die.
Okay, so that is technically a failure. You want to be able to roll under. So looking at the body, you can see that this man, he's a young man, scraggly beard. He's wearing the leather and fur of a soldier of Varnholm. You get the sense that he's probably been posted here as a guard for a long time. His stuff is sort of in disrepair. His sword kind of stuck in its scabbard from not being drawn in such a long time. And you can see, just based on your just kind of cursory glance, that he was clearly killed by having his throat torn out by some sort of claw, paw, something, not a weapon. It's not a clean cut. And that's the best that you can tell with that roll. What about you, Bentley? What are you doing?
Oh, Bentley is kind of just watching Maroon kind of go up towards the bodies, and as he gets closer and starts like poking around in it, he kind of starts to almost wince a little bit. And he's just kind of standing there wrapped in his cloak, kind of holding it with his arms. Despite the fact that he has like a heavy fur cloak on, he's still shivering like a maniac. Like he can just hardly keep still between all the clattering. And he just kind of walks up, just trudges just enough behind Maroon to kind of see what he's doing and see if he's found anything, but kind of keeping his distance from the body. And he just kind of taps him on the shoulder lightly, just says, "What the heck happened to them? I've never seen anything like this."
Well, I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure that's the problem. He's going to point straight to the throat.
And when you do so, Bentley just kind of like lets out another grimace and just kind of closes his eyes and like shakes his head and turns away from the bodies and just, "Yeah, I'll let you take a better look. I'm gonna go check that out." And just kind of literally just like pointing in a random direction.
Just pointing at the world. I'm going to go check that out. What about you, Hex?
Well, I'll see that these 2 are examining these bodies. and sort of disregard that scene and just move forward. I've seen plenty of dead soldiers in my day, and take a stride past them, sort of looking into this. It's sort of an opening of some kind, right?
Yeah, it's sort of it's almost like a natural cavern opening. Just this big sort of maybe 7 foot high by 10 feet wide, big entrance into this sort of natural cavern complex, just sort of carved into the Mauve black ice.
So I'll peer into there a little bit, but I'll stick with my friends. We've done some jobs together, so I won't stride ahead, but peer into there and sort of bracing against the cold. I'll say, well, mind your scarves, boys. Might want to tighten them up the way those Varnholm fools died. But it looked like a quick end. Now, we're either going to shut this voice up or die trying, because I've heard it long enough. Ready when you are.
And Bentley kind of walks up towards the mouth of the cave up next to you and just kind of looks at you almost like a mix of hope and sadness. Just, that's not going to happen to us, right? What happened to them?
I don't know, but speaking of ends and tightening up, if my end gets any tighter, I don't know if I'm going to be able to go to the bathroom for 3 weeks. Might as well just get this thing over with. Let's get inside and take care of business.
So the three of you sort of approach the entrance to the maw, and you sort of walk in, and after a little while, you realize that it's getting fairly dark, and one of you is going to probably have to pop a torch.
Bentley would actually take out from his pack a small lantern, and he kind of takes out a flask of oil and putting it into the center of the lantern, uses some flint to spark the lantern, and as best as he can is trying to shield it from the elements so that they can see.
Perfect. I was just checking on the usage die for a flask of oil. I hadn't checked that yet, so that's perfect. So for the usage die, basically every minute that you use it, you'll have to roll the usage die to see when it's going to run out. So I'll try to remind you of that, and we won't be super stringent about it, but just anytime I think about it that it's been a while, I'll be like, hey, roll a usage die. So Bentley gets this lamp going. It shines its golden glow, and you see the glow kind of play across the kind of crystalline structure of the Mauve black ice, and you can see that beneath the ice, you can see that there's actually like chrome underneath the ice. These very finely chiseled, man-made stone blocks, and as you sort of descend deeper into the maw, the black ice sort of gives way to these stones, and you see that you're now in this sort of man-made structure. You're in the tomb itself. And you move through, and you come to this big set of iron doors set at the end of this corridor. And you can see that the doors are sort of inlaid with like facsimiles of skulls. Like they're not actual skulls, but they're sort of carved into the door, these sort of skeletal faces. And as you're sort of looking at these faces, you all get flashes of that skeletal visage with the blue glowing hollows just kind of boring into your soul as you sleep. You see that these two doors will split at the center, and you can see that the right door is already hanging ajar and kind of hanging listlessly on its hinges as this sort of slight breeze comes down the corridor.
Well, Marun, should we knock?
Only an idiot knocks on an open door. He's going to like pull his shield out and get his hammer ready. He's going to say, but I've seen these skulls before, more than once. So I think we're on the right track. We need to keep going. He's going to start marching forward as bravely as he can.
I'll fall in with Maroon and knock an arrow and kind of keep it down toward the ground in downrange position and try to fall in behind the dwarf. That's my style.
Yeah, and Bentley will kind of follow in at a 3 or 4 feet behind them, kind of close enough that he can shine his lantern and they'll be able to see the light, but not so close that if something happens to them, he'll be right next to them. And he just kind of, I was like going back and forth between like trying to shield the lantern with his cloak from the wind and then getting too cold and then like wrapping himself back up in his cloak as he kind of like follows behind.
Don't fall behind back there, little guy. We need everything we can get in here is my guess.
So the three of you enter this first chamber. The door is sort of open ajar enough where the three of you can even slip through without having to open it anymore. And as you slip through and your lamp sort of illuminates, you see this sort of circular chamber made of this quarried stone with almost like ice sort of encroaching on it from the ceiling, where it's sort of melted and frozen again, kind of creeping down across the walls, almost like plant life, you know, but ice instead. You see that this room is dominated by a big stone dais at its center, and laid across this stone altar is this massive great sword with a huge, just thick blade, perfectly smithed, gleaming in the lamplight as you shine it across, and you can see the shadows of the runes that are carved into this blade so intricately. And as the three of you look upon this blade, you all get a flash of a silhouette, this massive man robed and armored, falling back against a throne as a man shoves this sword into his ribcage and then yanks it out. And a crown falls to the stone floor, clattering, splattering blood everywhere. And then just like that, all three of you are back standing in this chamber. The other thing you notice about this sword is that there's a man standing in front of it. And he appears to be frozen in place. He's a sort of savage-looking man, from what you can tell in the lamplight, bald with sort of ritualistic scars carved into his bald head. He's wearing these ratty furs, barely tanned, and he's reaching towards the sword, and you can see that his fingers are barely brushing the hilt of this sword, and he is frozen solid. Ice is hanging off of him like he's been there for years. He is completely frozen solid.
People never write on weapons for good reasons.
Still, I can't help but wonder what it says. And as he kind of walks up towards the sword, like putting his hand on the dais, but not on the blade itself, kind of running his hand under where the blade sits on the altar, is just looking at the runes more so than the blade and just trying to see if he can grasp anything of what it might be saying on there.
Go ahead and give me a intelligence test.
All right, I rolled a 2. I'm trying to beat a 15, so.
Perfect. So you see that the runes are an old language spoken here centuries ago, but it's something that you're passingly familiar with, and it uses the same alphabet as a couple other languages that you're sort of familiar with. And you can see that the runes basically describe the assassination of the man who has come to be known as the Frozen King. Each rune tells a different line of this story, and it's somewhat complex, each of these symbols. There's different sort of little additions to each symbol that add to the story, but what you can tell just kind of glancing at these runes is that that this king ruled this area for many, many years. He was an incredibly powerful man, both in martial prowess and also magically. He had vast armies that he controlled, but he was unseated by his own people, the people that he called subjects, but they called themselves his slaves. They rose up against him, and they used this blade to end him and sealed him away within this tomb.
As he just kind of continues to run his hand along under the blade, taking a look at each of the symbols and following the story, he just looks over to the rest of his companions, just says, This is not just a blade. This is a story. Story of power and the fall that comes with it. Someone was killed by this blade. These runes have been added as a tale of his death, a celebration of his death. He's buried here. We should be careful.
I'll step forward quickly, but spinning with my back toward Bentley. So, sort of a SWAT style. So I'm going to try to get sort of to the side of him, I suppose, trying to visualize our space here. And can I sort of do a sweep on the room? Can
Absolutely.
I sweep around, like, what exactly is our layout here? What elements are in play as we look at this stuff?
Yeah, so go ahead and give me a wisdom test, but I'll also just give you the rough layout of the room just as you're kind of glancing over it. You see the dais at the center. You see the ice kind of encroaching down the walls. You also see that there's a large door that is sort of opposite the entrance that you came in. So it's sort of like entrance door on the other end of the room.
Okay, well, I failed the wisdom test, so I don't
Okay.
get juicy details, but I'll try to just position myself so if Bentley is going to continue to investigate, that I'm between him and the far door.
Perfect. Okay, yeah. So you go ahead and position yourself near that far door, and as you come around the other side of the dais, Hex, you actually see out of your peripheral as you come around the other side of the dais that there is a sort of slight figure sort of crouched with his back to the dais, sort of shivering and trying his best not to breathe loudly.
We have contact, gentlemen. Maroon, could you step up here?
I don't think he's going anywhere, lad. He's frozen stiff. And he kind of walks up and taps on the frozen guy that's standing by the sword. Then he realizes that Hex is actually behind the dais and is talking about the other side. And he just kind of, hut, jogs around the other side of it to kind of see what's going on. His chainmail just kind of chink, 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 chink.
You see, sort of with his back against this dais, this elven man with kind of thick flowing hair. He's garbed in this really kind of, it's sort of similar to the armor that you saw the Varnholm guards wearing outside, but it's sort of adorned with like colorful bits of cloth that have kind of been stitched into it, giving him sort of a motley appearance. You see that he's kind of cradling this hand crossbow with a shaking hand. And as you come around the other side and he sees Hex and he sees you, Maroon, he kind of holds up his hands and says, please, don't kill me.
Maroon, seeing that he had a crossbow, it kind of held his shield partially in front of him, just, ready just in case. When he sees him put up his hands, he hangs his mace from his belt and also puts his hand out. It's easy. It's okay. We're not here to kill you. Who are you?
My name is Calvrist. I'm a soldier, watcher here in the tomb. I think I'm the only one left.
How long have you been here?
It feels like days, but potentially a few hours.
What has happened?
I don't know for sure, but some men arrived. Savages wielding stone weapons and wearing furs. They must have come out of the wilds north of here. They came and I heard a scuffle out front. I think the 2 men out there are dead. And then the savages made their way in. There were so many of them, I hid. I was frightened. So I hid here. It was a small blessing. The one they left behind to guard this room tried to take the sword. Otherwise, I would probably be dead. The rest of them continue deeper in the tomb. I don't know what their aim is here, but I don't know. They went deeper into the tomb.
Are your fingers limber enough to man that crossbow, man? If not, I suggest you run now before it all goes to hell.
Before you go running, how many were there? Do you have a number? I think you've frozen up, Matthew. All I see is your
remember
little
how many
wee
of them there
face.
were.
He's thinking really hard.
The cold really got to him.
I'm reading 2. That's what I think. I think there's 2 of them. Maybe. Oh no.
2, 22. Whatever.
What are you doing, Google? No. Oh man.
Intermission music.
So, yeah, Oath of the Frozen King. It doesn't usually stop at this point. The module or the adventure kit does actually continue on, has other stuff to it. No, but seriously, yeah, like check it out. It's fantastic. They're doing the Kickstarter still. I think it's got like 2 weeks left, if not a little more than that even. And I think it's over 4,000% funded, something like that now.
Maybe
so,
Matt's using a table right now to remember how many of them there are.
maybe. He's using an abacus.
I would like to think it isn't a technical problem, that there's some crazy DM stuff going on.
It's all to build tension.
Yep. It's all part of the
That's what
show.
he's doing. He's just such a masterful storyteller that he goes in full hog.
He has a button to freeze his camera. Oh, man.
Oh shit, he's standbying. Bastard.
Man, I haven't been the archer with a dwarf for, I can't even remember. I'm always the dwarf. It's really cool.
Yep. I like dwarves when you get to play them tropey. A lot of people avoid it. They don't like it. They think it's, overdone. But man, like when you get to play a dwarf as a dwarf, it's just so much fun. Elves, like when you play an elf like an elf, they're just kind of like a Vulcan dickhead. So, they tend to kind of be, no emotion. They barely react to anything. But a dwarf is
like extreme tree huggers.
Yeah,
which can be weird too.
But a dwarf, you're drinking, you're fighting, you're swearing, just lots of fun. Matt's back.
Sweet. Okay, I think I'm back. Can you guys hear me and everything?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. I just can't win tonight, man. Okay, all right. So, you had just asked Calvrist how many there were, and he looks up at you, Maroon, a little, almost suspiciously. He kind of says, well, what are you three doing here? You're technically trespassing too. What's your business in the tomb?
Well, we've been having these dreams, you see. And the blade in the dreams looks just like this blade here. And the skulls look just like the skulls outside. And now, they've been bothering me for a while. And I think the other two lads that I'm with, they have also been bothered by these dreams as of late. So we've come here for answers. And obviously, none too early.
Whoever put the sword to that king missed their mark. Because we're still here trying to shut up this voice and end it, whatever end may come.
Dreams and voices. But you all seem to come from different places. His reach, it goes that far.
Somehow he's extended his power with these damnable rings. And somehow they found their way to us. I don't know how. Do you know more of it?
Those rings, they look familiar, as if I've seen them before. I can't place it, though. So, it would seem that you've come to the tomb at the same time as these savages. What do you intend to do?
Marhern kind of, he was kind of somewhat crouching down a little to get behind his shield and also kind of to get closer to this man who's seated on the ground. And he kind of puts his hands on his knees and kind of straightens himself up with a groan. Well, I suppose we're here to kill all of them. That's probably what we're going to do. And even if that's not the plan starting out, I'm sure that's how it'll end.
Well, I wish you luck. I wish that I had the bravery to come with you, but well, I'm just being honest with myself. I simply don't. And I don't wish to have the suds befall me. I intend to go back to Varnholm, muster up more guards, come back here and take the tomb back by force. That is, if you three haven't taken it before then.
If not, just make sure we get home to our people so we can be buried.
I will do what I can. He sort of stands, cradling his crossbow, takes a deep breath, and he looks at the man frozen next to the sword. Well, the sergeant in charge of the guards here used to tell me that there was something deeper in the tomb that would allow a man to wield that blade. Maybe that's where the savages went. Good luck. I'll be back in a few days' time if you're still alive. And he sort of trudges out that same door that you three came in.
Marhun kind of watches him go. Then he kind of wrinkles his nose up and kind of looks at the other two. Do you smell piss?
To be honest, I've been holding my breath since we walked in here. It stings the nostrils.
Somebody needs to be drinking more water.
I'll bring my gaze back to that far doorway. And what kind of door are we dealing with there, Dungeon Master?
It's very similar to the double doors that you first walked through. It's this big iron door with, instead of skulls this time, you can see that it's sort of inlaid with this depiction of mountains. And if you're kind of looking at it, you can see that it's sort of a crude depiction of the mountains surrounding the Mauve black ice. So it's almost sort of a metal sculpted landscape, complete with trees and everything. And if you look closely, you can see that kind of rubbed away over time. You can see a little maw of black ice there set in the mountains with the opening and everything.
Well, at least they had a sense of decorative unity. So, Maroon, what do you say? Kick it in or open gently?
Well, like my brother always says, if you're going to do something, you might as well do it right and make sure everybody takes notice. And he's going to push the door with his foot as hard as he can.
You do so. You find it unlocked, unbarred. You push through, the door swings open for you, and you find a way which opens into a large rectangular room with a high soaring ceiling. And you can see as you enter that the floor beyond this passageway is seemingly made of ice. And you can hear it creaking, kind of. And as you look, you can see that there's water rushing beneath this ice, almost like there's a river underneath this room. And you also see that there are large icy boulders kind of dotting this room, blocking your path.
Now, this looks like the type of place that's meant to kill a man. So, Matt, I can I can roll advantage when using my dex to sort of avoid traps. So can I go ahead and take point on this one and creep forward and use that ability to sort of reach the first boulder?
Absolutely, you can. Yeah, go ahead and give me a dexterity test with advantage.
Ah, there's a 7. That's a success.
Perfect. So you kind of creep forward, choosing your steps very carefully. The floor, though made of ice, seems fairly thick enough to hold up all these icy boulders. But like looking through the room, you can see that you're going to have to kind of shift these boulders around because the ceiling sort of drops at a certain point and is barely above the height of these boulders. And you're sort of looking and you can see that there's another passageway on the far end of this room, but that the boulders are blocking your path and you might have to shift some of them aside in order to clear a path to that passageway.
So they're sitting on top of this ice floor, like they're slidable?
Yeah, exactly. You guys just basically entered into a Zelda puzzle room, for lack of a better phrase.
Well, I suppose since I've sort of have jumped to the spearhead here a little bit, I wouldn't like go sliding it or anything, but can I just give it I like to keep the arrow knocked, and I'll give it the toe of safekeeping down there. I'll give it a little toe nudge, a little boot nudge, see if this thing will move. Is it free moving? Is it heavy? Like, what am I dealing with?
You nudge it with your boot and it doesn't move. It's got a little bit of give to it. You imagine that it's going to take a little bit of exertion to get these boulders to build up enough inertia to actually slide on their own. And so it's going to take actual strength tests in order to be able to move them safely across the ice.
Well, I suppose that's my cue to give the head signal to my compadres that it seems to be safe at least to come up to my position, and I'll hold there.
And Bentley kind of trying to like almost do a light jog on the ice and then like almost slipping and falling, like just barely kind of catching himself, like, okay, maybe like take it slow. And he kind of like inches the rest of the way towards the boulder and just kind of looking at it, just, man, that's going to be tough to move. And then he just looks over towards Maroon.
And Maroon is standing back at the entrance to this room. almost kind of flattened up against the doorway, and he's kind of tiptoeing out onto the ice, just as much as his foot can reach out there, and he gingerly kind of puts weight on it. And I imagine there's a little crack and pop just a bit, and he looks down and sees that running water, and he's like, "Oh no, lad, we dwarves, we don't swim so well. We're made of the mountain. We sink straight to the bottom." He kind of backs up, kind of retrieves his foot back. Oh, okay, here we go. And he kind of takes his beard and kind of puts it up over his eyes, and then he kind of flattens himself up against the wall and starts just shimmying sideways along the wall over to where his two companions are.
You all group up in front of the first sort of pair of boulders here blocking your path. It's going to take a strength test in order to move them.
Arun kind of looks to one side and sees Hex. And then he kind of looks to the other side and he sees Bentley. And then he looks at the big, heavy rock in front of him, and his shoulders just kind of fall. All right. And he kind of spits into both of his hands and rubs them together. And then being very, very careful to not look down through the ice, he puts his hands up on the boulder, the first one, and then starts to try to slide it out of the way.
All right, give me a strength test.
I rolled a 20.
Okay, perfect. So, that's lovely. As you sort of push against this boulder, you kind of put too much of your sort of fulcrum on the ice. And as you push on the boulder, you hear and you see this crack sort of spreading across the ice, emanating from where your feet are. And you sort of let off on the boulder, but you see that the floor is kind of sagging a little bit as this crack kind of...
Bloody hell, Maroon. Have you forgotten what you're made of, man? I'll go for the... Quickly, before I can think twice about it, I'll go for the Spartan kick on the boulder.
All right, give me a strength test.
And I'm sitting on 12 strength, so come on, baby. 13.
Maroon says, I don't know my own strength. I'm sorry.
Did you miss?
Yeah, I missed it by 1.
Okay, cool. So you go to kick this boulder, and as you do so, taking your weight off of that foot, putting it all on one foot, you hear the and there's kind of a moment of silence, and then the floor just shatters, and you all, boulders and everything, fall into this river. So I'm going to need to have everyone give me a constitution test as you plummet into freezing cold water.
It was an awesome playtest, Matt. I loved it.
I bombed that one too.
Okay, perfect. So anyone who fails their constitution test is going to take 2 damage from sort of falling, having rocks and ice fall with you, and also just the sheer shock of plummeting into this freezing cold river. The 3 of you are just deposited. Just the river is rushing, and you're banging off of things. The boulders are kind of rolling with you, and you knock into them a few times. And eventually you sort of spill out. And then you come crashing down onto the icy floor of another chamber. You're all sputtering, your lungs, your throat are full of this icy water, and you're all just drenched in the frigid, cold water of the river.
Damn you, 8 constitution.
Hey man, I had a 7 and I somehow made it, so come on.
Wow.
I love it. So I've got the adventure kit here next to me, and I'm reading off of it. And for that skill challenge that you guys just did, critical failure counts as 2 failures. 3 failures counts as the floor giving way. All you needed was 3 failures, and the floor just completely shattered. So, good job, guys. That was awesome.
Nothing but net.
Nothing but net. That's perfect. So, the 3 of you are in a different room. It's sort of, it's more natural than the rooms that you've seen before. You know, the rooms you've seen before are all this kind of quarried stone. But you've sort of come into a room that's maybe below the rooms that you were in before. It's this natural cavern. Your lamp has gone out, by the way. Go ahead and give me a usage die roll, Jeff. And you can see that there's this waterfall just pouring into this pool, and the 3 of you have been sort of deposited into this room. There are bones just littering the floor. You're kind of not sure what it is at first, this kind of clattering sound as you're kind of getting to your feet, coming up on your knees, kind of catching your breath. You realize that the floor is just littered with bones, but until you get a light source lit, you're not sure exactly what your surroundings look like.
I think we may have other swimmers here. I'm hoping we can make it out of here, but I'm starting to doubt it a little.
Well, at least we went deeper instead of out the front door. So, Bentley, you think you can strike a flint in this freeze?
And then you kind of hear just in the pitch black, just like, I think it's in here somewhere. And just like him, like digging through his pack. And he's just like, there it is. And he like pulls something out, but then like nothing lights. And you can just hear like the flipping of pages and then like a slight thud on the ground. And then a moments later, the lamp just sparks back up. And you would see on the ground that he had taken out, the first thing that he grabbed was this large book, almost like a thick black tome that he had pulled out of his pack to make sure that was okay first, and then lit the lamp.
Oh, but he did get it lit.
Yes.
Yeah, Marhoon will take that opportunity once the light kind of starts to spill out of Bentley's lamp to then kind of look around and nudge things about with his boot. That's a lot of bones.
As the lamp sort of flickers to life and again casts its golden glow, you can see that indeed this is sort of a natural cavern, but there is some sort of hand of man here. You can see that there are pillars sort of carved out of the sides of the walls, and these pillars are set with these sort of circular shelves, half circular shelves, and the shelves are just piled with skulls, just piles and piles of hundreds of skulls. And the floor is so dense with bones that you can't even really see the floor. You're basically walking on piles of bones, and the bones are spilling into the pool that you were all kind of shot into from this waterfall. And as you sort of light the lamp and you're listening, you can hear the bones kind of shifting a little bit. You hear them cracking. Something is in here with you, just beyond the lamplight. Something is moving in the shadow. Something is aware of you, and it's hunting you.
Gods, what devilry is this? They've got a pit. A pit? I've no taste for this kind of garbage. I'll take a shot into the black.
Go ahead and give me your attack test at disadvantage since you're firing blind.
So that's 2, and take the worst one. Ah, at disadvantage, missed it. So kind of flew wide.
Yeah, you shoot an arrow into the darkness. Make sure you roll that usage die as well, and you don't hear it connect with anything. You hear it kind of clatter on the stone. That telltale sound of an arrow missing. And as you're all three kind of standing there, something flies out of the darkness at you, and it's going to strike.
And I thought he was just giving a dramatic pause.
I know, master of suspense over here.
I was like typing in the chat, and I was like, "Come on, Dad!" Like, damn. And then I looked up, and I was like, "Oh,
who's he striking?"
Wait, we might have him. Maybe.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Maroon, I need a dexterity test, please.
Failure.
A icicle streaks out of the darkness and strikes you, dealing 1 damage as it pierces your shoulder and puts you right on your ass. Just the force of this thing and the unstable ground that you're standing on, you immediately go to the ground, knocked prone by this icicle. Immediately following the icicle, a creature appears out of the shadow. You can see that it's vaguely humanoid, but spindly, hunched over, almost like an animal with long claws and curving horns. Its skin appears to be made out of ice, and it comes across this field of bones, crushing them underneath itself, and charges towards you. Let's go ahead and roll for initiative. So the way initiative works is everyone tests their dexterity. If you succeed, you go before the monster. If you fail, you go after. Cool. Okay, so it looks like Hex and Bentley are going to be going before the monster. So you guys can decide amongst yourselves who goes when. Basically, that's just you have free reign to take your actions before the monster. You can move and take a single action. So go ahead and decide between you.
Go ahead, Bentley. I'm just like still have my bowstring twanging from my shot.
So as this thing charges towards us and seeing Maroon get stabbed by this icicle spear, Bentley kind of almost stumbles back, almost falling back into the pool that they had just climbed out of. And he sets the lantern on a pile of bones, just hoping that it's stable. And he pulls out he takes his staff and he grasps it in both hands, and he kind of goes to motion as if he's going to swing and just like freezes. I'm just going to say that's my turn.
Okay. Hex, you're up.
How far away is this devilish thing?
So using the range bands from Black Hack, I would say that this thing is nearby, not yet close, but a single move action away from you.
Okay, great. So I'll take one side step and take a knee right by Maroon in case he needs a hand, because that was a grisly little scene. So get right into cover on him, and I'll take a shot at this thing. Hey, there's a 9 out of 14. That's a success.
Perfect.
And then for my damage is it's minimum. That's a 1 on a D6.
All right, 1 damage. Noted. Oh, my pen's dying. There we go. So you manage to clip this thing with an arrow, and you see kind of chunks of ice fly off of it, but the arrow doesn't stick into it. All right. That brings us to the monster, who kind of charges forward and perceiving Hex as the biggest threat, as you're the only one that's connected with it, it kind of makes a beeline for you, Hex, kind of almost passing Bentley by, and it's going to rake at you with these icicle claws. So go ahead and give me a strength test to try and avoid the melee damage. So it just rakes these ice claws across you. You feel it tear through the fur, tear through the leather, and deals 2 points of damage. And that will bring us to Maroon.
So Hex had said he made his way over to me and knelt down, and then this troll came closed with him. So I kind of imagine that Marhoon is kind of laying in these bones, maybe almost somewhat buried in them. And he looks up and he sees that the troll is straddling him. So he's going to pull that mace out and he's going to try to ring his bell right between the legs.
All right, awesome. Give me a roll.
An 8 out of 13.
Perfect. Go ahead and give me damage.
Okay. 6.
6 damage. Perfect. That's awesome, man. Good job. Yeah, go ahead and describe that. That's a good amount of damage on this guy.
So I kind of swing upwards straight into his groin, and I either, hit solid on the groin and maybe shatter his pelvis on the bottom, or, it connects with, just to the side and maybe dislocates part of his hip, something to that nature. And I roll out from underneath of him and kind of stand up and bring my shield and mace to bear.
Perfect. Yeah, and there's just like shards of ice just fly off of him as you do this, kind of crashing through his form. Okay, that brings us back around to Bentley and Hex. Go ahead, guys.
So finally, like, kind of calming his nerves enough and trying to like focus on the fight and just like, no, I have to help. Like, he drops his staff and the book that he's been carrying, he like picks it up in both hands and he starts to just like flip wildly through the book. And I'm going to make a spell roll and hope that I can succeed.
Yeah, and the way spell rolls work is if you fail the roll, you lose a spell slot for the day. So that's how that works.
Alrighty, and I only get 1 at this level, so that is a 12 on a 15.
Perfect.
So that is awesome. All right, so Bentley kind of, he's flipping through the book, he kind of stops on this image. It's actually an image of a skull, and it's wrapped in these strange runic symbols that kind of circle around the outside of it. And as he kind of just like almost snaps to some realization that he found in his own head, he picks up one of the skulls off the ground in his hand, and the skull begins to fade into dust. And the dust begins to turn into this strange, almost inky black color. And as he kind of holds his hand out to it, the black kind of collating around his hands, it forms this dagger of pure black energy that flies forth into the creature as I cast Magic Missile for 2 damage.
Dope. Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, and the missile just slams into this creature from the side, completely, not even paying attention to you, Bentley. And it slams into him, shards of ice just, and it almost kind of takes a knee as you do this, but it immediately rights itself and kind of whirls and looks at you with these beady eyes coming out of its almost skull-like face. And that brings us to you, Hex.
Well, I'll try to take the momentum of we're just teaming up on this thing. So I think I'll use my sort of improvised style of combat, which is a 1d4 damage. And I'll just flip an arrow around in the fingers and then go for the old arrow in the eye socket melee style, since we're like point blank on this thing. And that's a hit. 10.
Very nice. I love that they include the damage for improvised weapons just like right on there. That's so fun.
So 2 damage. So the arrow found its mark, dig it around a little bit in the back of his sternum like a bowl of cereal.
Yeah, and this thing arches its back as you dig the arrow in there. That's perfect. It's actually going to claw at Bentley, kind of whirling around, covering the distance in an instant. And so, Bentley, I will need a strength test from you to try to avoid that melee damage.
That's a no-go.
So 2 damage as this thing rakes its claws across you. And I imagine you're just wearing like robes, things like that, no armor or anything. And so it easily just shreds whatever clothes you're wearing and shreds your flesh as well with those icicle-like claws.
Mechanics question. With armor points, are we like digging into those when we're taking damage? Are we subtracting them? What do we do with them? Because I realized I totally didn't use it, and I
didn't even think about that. That's a really good point. So armor points, basically, you can choose to use those to nullify damage, and it's a finite amount of points. So whenever you use a point to negate a point of damage, that point goes away until you rest, and then you regain the armor point. So it's basically, the book explains it as like, at a certain point, you're too tired to make effective use of the fact that you're wearing armor. And so it just doesn't really give you any benefit anymore. So
right. And then when you rest, you kind of stitch your stuff back up.
Yeah, exactly. You get it back to working order. You're feeling rested again. You can make effective use of the armor. So yeah. Chainmail that's a good question. Let me look it up. Yeah, and ask any questions you guys have, because we're pretty much learning the system together right now. So not that there's,
that's great, because I was like dropping to half already.
Yeah. 6 armor points. So if you guys want to retroactively use some armor points and get rid of some armor points and then get rid of some damage that you took, that's totally fine, because I had completely forgotten about armor points.
Yeah, I went back and used up 2 just because I blew all my money on that stuff.
Yeah, no, totally. And then if either of you has a shield, I don't know if you have a shield, Maroon, but if you have a shield, a small shield is 2 armor points and a large shield is 4 armor points.
I think I'm going to go with a large shield if I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about armor points, so that's perfect. So that was the monster. So now it is Maroon's turn again.
Okay, so the creature just ran over to Bentley and attacked him and kind of left Hex and I behind. He's going to kind of follow almost on the heels of this creature. And as he comes running up behind, and this creature kind of is swinging its arm downward to drag its claws across the conjurer, he's actually going to use that opening on the right-hand side of his body where he's got his arm raised, and he's actually just going to swing away with his mace right into the ribs if he can.
Absolutely.
11 out of 13.
Beautiful. Give me some damage.
Come on, 6 again. 3.
3 is just enough. Go ahead and describe how you take this thing down.
Nice. Okay, so I'm swinging for his ribs, and I think I actually miss where I was aiming and bring it down kind of more in the soft part of his the small of his back. And what I connect with is not rib cage, it's actually just his spine. And when I do, there's just this sickening snap that kind of echoes throughout this entire cavernous room. And I don't think he's entirely dead, but he can't move. He's paralyzed. He like falls over into a heap on the ground. And I think we might have to finish him off.
Yeah, he goes to the ground, clattering into the bones. Bones go flying as he falls. And you see, as he's laying there, kind of like grasping feebly at you, trying to pull you down with him, you can see that he's almost, it looks like he's starting to melt. Like he's like kind of getting smaller and slighter, and you just see this puddle kind of forming underneath him.
Maroon's not going to let him suffer, as vile as he is. He'll step up and finish him off with a mace to the skull.
You do so, and it just shatters. And you see that this creature has no blood. It has no flesh. It was made of ice. It was a being of pure ice, likely made of the same ice that the Mauve black ice was made out of. And so as he kind of melts into a puddle, you can see that it just begins kind of evaporating as this creature leaves the material plane, whatever it happened to be.
Is that all you can conjure, Frozen King?
And Bentley kind of leans down, picking the lantern and staff up out of the skulls and bones in the room. And just looks over to Hex, just with this look of just like, what the heck are you talking about? Just says, I'd prefer if he didn't do any more conjuring. At least that's my opinion.
I think I might feel the same way, lad. He kind of nudges some of these pieces that are finishing up melting with his boot. If there's more things that he's got up his sleeve that are as unnatural as this thing was, I'd hate to see him. But I guess we've no choice. Let's press on.
And the room that you're in, again, is sort of, it's this cavern with these pillars. And you kind of look around, you're kind of scanning the walls. You see that, there's the waterfall that you came in on, but there's no chance of you climbing back up there and working your way up the river. And there's no sort of obvious way to get out of here. But if you guys want to kind of closely inspect any certain areas, you can go ahead and give me a wisdom test to do so.
Well, I was going to do that, but I rolled a 20. So I don't think... I imagine that Bentley tries to look around the room and try to like figure out, and all he can just do is just everywhere he looks is just skulls, and he just like can't deal with it, and just like I'm not gonna look around anymore.
Yeah, and it's actually Hex that finds it. He sort of is, you're all kind of wandering around, maybe looking at the walls, looking at the pillars, and Bentley, as you're kind of sweeping your lamp around, Hex, you see the light filter through a certain portion of the wall. And you can see that there's one portion of this wall that is made out of ice, thin enough where you can kind of see that there's a room on the other side of this ice if you can break through it.
Well, bathing in this sort of cerulean light coming through this weird wall, which is a fantastic scene, I sense from my two companions like the dip in the cold water and the sight of this devil has shaken them a little bit. And I'd like to turn back to them, sort of, do the old finger spin on the arrow back into the quiver and kind of step over to them over these bones as gingerly as I can, look them both in the eye and say, hey, lads, for better or for worse, we've been chosen to do this thing and we're going to frickin' do it. So on your feet and let's get it done. And I have, just because of the accidental rolling of my stats, I have a 17 charisma. So can I ply that on my allies? Can I ply this charisma and warm their hearts, basically?
Absolutely, you can.
Here we go. Let's give it a try. There you go. 12 out of 17. So hopefully they feel it. Like I want to convey that destiny called us here. There's no going back. There's only forward. So let's keep our chins up while we do it.
Yeah, and as you kind of give your rousing speech there, Bentley kind of like nods with a renewed confidence. Like he's been a little shaky this whole time, and he's just kind of hearing those words, just like fate. This is fate. This is the goal. This is what we exist for. He kind of like kind of becomes a little bit more stalwart in the task, and is ready to press on.
Yeah, Marhoon is kind of shaking and trembling now that the adrenaline of the battle kind of wore off. He's definitely feeling that icy swim that they took, and it's kind of cutting. And he just kind of sits there chattering his teeth and just nods along as Hex is talking. And he says, "It's fine with me, as long as we keep moving. Otherwise, I think I'm going to freeze like that fellow in the first place."
So I suppose with that, I'll turn back to this wall that I've detected. And, oh boy, a little torn there. But I suppose slide my hand around on it a little bit and try to feel where the thin spot is. And not exactly going to Spartan kick through it, but I don't think there's a ginger way to do this. So I think I'll just give it a little pop if I can.
Absolutely. Go ahead and give me a strength test.
Okay. That's what we call a little pop.
A little pop.
Just a little pop, you know, nothing crazy.
Just a low one.
And there it is, 4 out of 12.
There you go. So you kick through and the ice just gives way beneath your boot and spills into the room beyond. And you are putting so much weight into your boot that you kind of tumble into the room as the wall gives way. And you come up, look around, and you're back in the entrance chamber. You see the dais sitting there with the sword atop it. You've managed to find your way through to a secret entrance of this place.
It looks like it's back to the pond, boys. Unless there's something we missed.
Monoroon's going to look over to Bentley as Hex goes through the wall and say, well, at least he's eager. And he'll kind of step through the hole that Hex made and see where they're at. And he's like, ugh, you've got to be fucking kidding me.
And as Bentley kind of follows in behind, kind of making his way through the passageway, just like, what are you grumbling about now, Maroon? And then just like seeing the dais there again and the sword, just like puts his head back and just kind of like shakes it. Well, I guess you get a second chance at your icy wonderland up ahead.
So do I understand our layout properly where we've sort of seen a triangle of spaces? And the ice trap may have had another exit, but we were swept out of that room.
Yes, yeah. There was definitely a passageway beyond those boulders. Now, luckily, the boulders aren't there anymore, but neither is the floor.
So
well, I hope you guys like swimming.
Bentley kind of like looks at the rushing river, just like that was powerful enough to like just slam them through, and just there's got to be a better way than that.
The entire sort of chasm that exists now, it's about 30 feet. Too far to jump, but you imagine that if you could get some sort of like, I don't know, like a bridge or a rope or something across, you could probably sort of sussing that out.
Well, I did spend the gold on 50 feet of rope.
Well, I have kind of a crazy idea. So I actually have I have rope, but I also have iron spikes. Can I tie a rope to one of the spikes and try to like lasso it into the ice and have it like jam into the other side of the chasm like an ice pick and like use that?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You can try that.
All right, would that be Dex or Strength?
I would say that would be either. You can go ahead and pick whichever one. If you're going to try to do it a little more deftly, or if you're just going to like brute force it over there.
How about we go with neither? Try to like swing the rope around and let it loose. He's just not strong enough, and the spike just hits into the ice, but it just kind of like clinks into it, and just like it kind of hit the side and just clinks into the side of the wall. And the rope just kind of like falls dangling down into the river, and he has to like try to wind it back up out of the frozen river. And just kind of like looks to his companions with just a look of just utter shame.
Monroe's kind of just standing there staring at Bentley, just trying to understand what just happened and why. And not really saying anything, just standing there.
So I'll see this, look over at Maroon and say, I've heard a rumor you dwarves can hold your feet pretty good. I'll hand him my end of my rope, wrap the other end around my left arm, and just swan dive in. Fuck it. Swim to the far end of the room with Maroon running the belay.
Like I said, eager.
All right, so what I'll need from both of you is a strength test, please. With advantage since you're using the rope.
Oh, yeah. Didn't even need the advantage. You got a 2.
Sweet.
Got a 7 out of 13.
Perfect. While I'm thinking about it, Jeff, give me a usage die roll on that lamp of yours. So you swan dive into this river, and it immediately starts yanking you again, but you feel the taut of the rope as Maroon catches you, and you're able to sort of paddle your way across the river, and you wind up on the other side, kind of clambering, and you have this rope now stretched across the chasm.
Great. I'll throw it around my waist, 1 foot on the opening, lean back into belay position, get it as tight as I can, and give the old Spartan nod.
And then I imagine, as with Maroon kind of anchoring one end and Hex anchoring the other, Bentley would kind of use that opportunity to make his way across. And I don't know if you want any kind of roll to use the rope to get across, or if it's enough to just make it over.
With the rope across and with Hex on the other side, just super secure, you can make it across. It's uncomfortable, like the river is cold and you're kind of being pulled in one direction the entire time, but you make it across and you manage to clamber up and make it across just fine.
All right, Stumpy, let's see what you've got.
So Maroon kind of was standing there, secure with this thing kind of around his backside, one hand on each side of his hips, holding onto this. And he kind of watches Bentley cross to the other side and realizes once Bentley has safely crossed that he's been holding his breath the entire time. So he kind of, good boy, way to go, lad. And then he realizes with a rock that just drops into his stomach, what has to happen next. That now, to complete this task, he has to get across. And he starts grumbling to himself in Dwarvish. Pretty sure it's all curses. And he starts tying a knot around himself in the end of the rope. And then he kind of thinks about it 2 or 3 times. And then he goes ahead and doubles up on the knot. And then he triples up on the knot. And he kind of tests it. And he looks over the edge, down at the water. He kind of shakes his head. And he gives himself the equivalent of the cross. And he says, all right, I hope you boys had your breakfasts. I'm not going to be able to get out myself. So you're going to have to pull me up. And he runs and jumps off of the edge, trying to get out over the water as far as he can before he falls.
The old dwarven cannonball.
Exactly. I think that's frozen again.
I was wondering if I could speak Dwarvish so I could count to 3.
Or Matt. So yeah. Oath of the Frozen King, we already talked about that. The awesome Kickstarter, the kick-ass Kickstarter that they're having. But get in on it. It's going to be a sweet book, especially now that they've hit all these insane stretch goals.
Yeah, and we're playing straight off the dice drop dungeon that Matt did online.
Oh, are we? Yeah, I started watching it, and then I stopped once he started saying that it was for this game. I was like, I'll wait.
Yep, I had to bail even like, oh, that's really cool technique. Oh, look at that. Look how cool that's getting. Oh, crap. And then I fled and went out and mowed the yard or something.
Yeah, I didn't even try to watch it. I was like, there's like a 99% chance that that's going to be for us. So I'm really excited to watch it as soon as we finish this to see what happens. But
yeah, it'll be really cool to see the 2 different perspectives.
Yeah.
Man, I haven't dealt with a secret door in ages. I can't even remember the last time I had a nice little line on my map with an S through it. I mean, that's some classic stuff right there.
To me, I always make sure in my campaigns to put a dungeon crawl somewhere, because to me it is such an essential part of the game that it's tried and true in that, but there's just something about going from room to room to room, finding traps, having to do puzzles, secret doors, and having to fight multiple times before you're able to really take a rest. It's just, I mean, there's no such thing as doing it the wrong way, but since I cut my teeth on first edition, it's just a part of the game to me that I can't separate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long we played before it even occurred to us we could do anything else. It must have been 5-7 years before we even were like, hey, is there a sun in this world? maybe we should go look at it.
Yeah, somewhere around like the 40th level of Greyhawk, you're like, wait a second.
I think we dreamed about being in Greyhawk, but we were just like in a tunnel somewhere.
Yeah.
No, we're totally in Greyhawk. We're under Greyhawk. Trust me, it's a very rich setting.
It's really just kind of an off black.
Man, I love combat with small numbers. I absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in our 5th edition game. We're 6th level, and it's like the numbers are just wildly out of control. So like 2 damage is so fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is my first time playing D&D that's not 5th edition. So like, I'm used to having like 30 HP at level 3 with like a billion spells, and it's like I took 2 damage and I'm like almost dead.
Yep.
Okay, I'm back again. I just don't even know what's going on tonight. So I think we'll go ahead and actually take this opportunity to take a quick break right after we resolve what happens with Marun here going across the thing. So I'm sorry, Jeremy, the last thing I heard was that Marun was realizing what was about to happen. So go ahead and finish your thought there.
Yeah, so he's realized what has to transpire here. And he gives himself kind of the equivalent for his god of crossing himself, and grumbling and moaning in Dwarvish. He then kind of tells them that they're just going to have to catch him. They're going to have to reel him in. And he backs up a couple of steps and runs and jumps as far out as he can with the rope knotted around himself 3 times. And just hopes for the best.
And you sort of cannonball into the river, just, and you're instantly submerged in this freezing water. Again, that shock of getting into water that is just so much colder than you're used to being in. But you feel that rope go taut, and both Bentley and Hex are reeling you in, pulling you in like a crab pot, just pulling you in and dragging you up the little cliff face, and you kind of clamber, wet and soaking, water just dripping off your beard and your hair as you clamber up on the other side of the shore.
He kind of gets up onto his knees, and he's and he just kind of wrings his beard out like a towel. And he kind of looks up to them, and he's still kind of and he kind of just holds his hand up as if to say thanks, because he can't manage the words right now.
That's perfect. All right, so we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, bathroom break, get yourself something to drink, all that kind of stuff, and we'll go ahead and continue when we come back. So thank you, everyone, for watching. I'm having a good time, tech issues aside, and can't wait to get going here again. So we'll take a quick break and be back.
Hey, we're back. Neglect not the body, lest the mind wither. So I've done like maybe 5 games in the last like 6 days, right? And the same damn thing keeps happening, which is that I've got like 3-man teams that are supposed to be one-shots. And I keep thinking, oh man, this has got to be a campaign. And it just keeps happening over and over. I don't know what the hell's going to... You can't have like 15 campaigns.
No. But it's a good problem to have, man. I mean,
You
like,
can't, but apparently
Well.
I'm trying. So
yeah, I've got to slow down. Like, I just keep
You
saying
and me
yes.
both, man.
I keep saying yes because there's all these amazing concepts and the opportunity to try new systems and play under new DMs and all of the above at once. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we did a game the other night where we played just like this. And I actually did a camera on 3D terrain on my table here. But we didn't stream it. And it was actually very eye-opening because it felt a lot like being at the table.
Sure.
And I think we're almost to that point. I mean, we keep having silly tech hiccups and everything, but we're definitely like closer than ever before. So it just felt like hanging with the homies the other night when we were playing. And it was also supposed to be a one-shot play test. And then we're like, oh my God, if this isn't a campaign, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, there's definitely a different kind of level of play that comes from a game like this where you have that level of you got to perform. You know, there's people watching. You know, there's an audience versus playing at the table where you're really just performing for the people that are part of the cast. You know, with you.
Yeah,
so it's just a slightly different thing, but they're both fun. I wouldn't trade being able to play at the table for anything.
No, me neither. And, you know, the people that I play with at the table, I would never sign them up to be on camera because that was never their idea. But if you have players who are already have said, I'm happy to be on camera and can kind of just be themselves and be whatever, I don't think you get that weird thing that I've always worried about, you know, which is the influence of the eye.
Yep.
Welcome back, Dungeon Master.
Thank you, my friends. Are you guys ready to continue?
But of course.
Awesome. So real quick before we get going, I am running Oath of the Frozen King. It's an adventure kit that is coming out from Absolute Tabletop. And if you're interested in checking out the kit itself, there is a link down in the dungeon. So go down there and check it out. We currently have it on Kickstarter, and it's doing really well. So go check it out. Okay, so when we last left our intrepid adventurers, they had just crossed a icy chasm with just a frigid river. They're now standing on the other side, and there is a doorway, an open doorway sort of leading down a long hallway behind them.
Well, hey, Shrimp, why don't you prove some stone and take point, eh?
You're talking to me? Fine. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go first.
And
I
Bentley
wasn't
would have been
referring to
looking
your
at
title, your
Maroon
swimming
too,
prowess.
like, oh, Shrimp, the short one. Yes, please go.
Maroon, like, oh, yeah, sure. Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll go first. Why not? I'm always dripping wet, soaking to my bones. I've only had, an icicle shoved into my shoulder from whatever the hell that was that we fought earlier. No problem. Yeah, I'll go first. He kind of pulls his shield out, pulls his mace out, kind of gives another tremble and a shake as this cold is still kind of taking hold of him. He just kind of bangs his shield, his mace against the edge of his shield, and then starts stalking forward.
The three of you sort of head down this short hallway, and you soon come to another iron door, this one also ajar, having previously been open. And as you kind of go down the hallway, getting close to it, you can hear voices emanating from this room. they're sort of low guttural voices, and they seem to be arguing. You can't discern a language as of yet. You just hear these angry voices coming from this room.
Maroon kind of looks back over his shoulder with a raised eyebrow, kind of making sure that his companions can hear this too. And then he kind of just raises a single finger up to his mouth and then creeps forward.
I've seen dwarven creeping before.
Yeah, that dwarven chain creep.
Luckily, the whoever the voices are coming from seem to be distracted, and you're able to approach the door without attracting any attention. If you kind of peer inside, you see the backs of several large men and women covered in furs, holding stone weapons, and they're sort of like standing on opposite sides of the room, kind of yelling back and forth at each other. And you can see that there's two large men in the center of this group, and they're both kind of holding on to this beautiful white fur cloak, completely unstained, the hem perfect, like it's just this beautifully stark white fur cloak, and they're both holding on to it and kind of tugging it back and forth and brandishing their weapons at each other.
Can all three of us see into this into the doorway?
Yeah, do you guys do like the cartoon, like one head, two head, three head, like just like totem pole across the corner to look? Yeah.
How many individuals are we dealing with here?
If you take a moment to count, it looks like there are 5 of them in total.
So I imagine as we all three have now kind of peered in, all three of our heads kind of disappear back away behind the door frame.
And it has to do that sound effect when it goes back. Yeah.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then we cut to the shot of us all kind of huddled together near the doorway. Well, you know, I love it when a problem solves itself. I mean, they're obviously not happy with one another. And the kind of people that we're dealing with, I think they're just going to eventually butt heads with each other. And then we just go in and clean up. That's what I see.
And he kind of like nods, like, yeah, okay, so yeah, we'll let them fight it out, and then once it kind of stops for a moment, I can do something. So just give me the word, and I'll go.
Do you really think they're going to kill each other over a wedding dress? I've got a feeling we'll have to do the dirty work.
Well, I definitely don't think they're going to be massaging one another with those weapons they had on their hands. Maybe. I don't know human customs. They're all kind of foreign and strange to me, if you ask me.
Foreign and strange to us humans, too, so don't worry too much about it.
Well, I suppose let's take a breath and see what happens.
So the three of you kind of just like chill for a bit in front of this door, and the argument kind of goes back and forth a little bit. They're speaking this language that you guys aren't familiar with. You assume it's some barbaric language that they speak in the far north. It's very, very low, very guttural. But they're kind of, you know, slinging these words across the room to each other. And eventually it gets very, very heated. You hear shuffling, you hear a thud, and then all hell breaks loose. You actually feel a body kind of slam against the door that you're all leaning against and kind of knocks the door against the back of your heads a little bit. And you see blood kind of flowing under the door where you're sitting. And you just hear thuds, weapons clanging against each other. And in a matter of about 12 seconds, it's over. And you just hear the voices kind of continue talking very low this time. And you hear them kind of rolling bodies over, pulling weapons off as the winning side claims their loot.
I think that went rather well. So let's see how many we might have left then.
Yeah, go introduce yourself.
Yeah, and Bentley kind of like leans around the corner one more time to try to like take a look and see kind of what we have ended up with.
You see 2 bodies on the ground, 3 of these huge men kind of standing over the bodies. You see one body on the ground, just kind of mangled, bunch of broken bones from being clubbed to death. The second body with a stone axe just right in the forehead, just cleaving his face in half. And you see that the largest man is sort of putting the cloak over his shoulders, brushing stuff off of it and kind of admiring himself, his own reflection in the ice that coats the walls in this room.
Yeah, and Bentley kind of looks over to his two comrades and kind of like puts up a finger as if to like hold on for a moment. And I'm gonna make a spell check. And that is a 12 under a 15. So basically what happens in the middle of this room, kind of in the center of where these kind of three people may be gathered that are left, something happens in this area that most people, it's familiar yet rare in this area. And that is the feeling of warmth. And suddenly in the center of this area, it's almost like a campfire on the ground made of this like illusory smoke, and red flame sprouts up. And as it does so, this smoke begins to trail off of it, that begins to glitter between like the light of the ice, this strange bluish and purplish colors mixing with the orange and the red of the fire. And as the smoke kind of drifts along into the room, these three people almost breathe it in. And as they do so, they begin to feel the warmth and the comfort take hold of them, and they begin to feel drowsy. And I'm casting sleep, which is what's the exact? So 4d6 hit dice worth of beings will be put to sleep.
Okay, you can go ahead and roll that 4d6 for me.
Not too shabby. That is 12 hit dice worth of these three remaining people will be put to sleep by the magic of the flame.
Sorry, say that number again.
12.
12? Okay, yeah. So you do this, the smoke rolls into the room, and almost like simultaneously, all three of these guys just kind of keel over. One of them kind of goes to his knee first and is kind of like, he looks over towards the door and he sees you, Bentley, kind of, around the door casting this spell, and he starts to kind of crawl towards you and then just kind of falls face first, the cloak covering him as he falls on the ground.
I imagine Bentley might jump a little as a meaty hand kind of claps him on the shoulder, kind of out of nowhere. And he looks down to see that Maroon was kind of watching, and he's got this excited face on his face. And he goes, "Ha! Way to go, laddie!" And he kind of stalks into the room as if, he had done something awesome.
Yeah, and then as Maroon kind of walked into the room, he might not even notice it as he just walks right past, but maybe Hex would see. Bentley actually is kind of like leaning against the stone wall now and just kind of like, and as he coughs, trails of that bluish purple smoke kind of come out of his mouth as he kind of winces in pain, kind of just like shakes it off for a moment and just like, and then follows Maroon into the room.
Yep, I'll brace Bentley a little bit, give him a pat, spin him around, set him on his trail, watch our six, and back into the room.
You enter the room and you see that it's a smaller room than the one you were just in, probably a similar size to the entrance chamber. And this room, too, is sort of dominated by this big stone slab on one far corner, sort of set into an alcove within the ice. The slab is covered in what looks like offerings. There's kind of like piles of copper coins, feathers, yellowed bones with kind of runes inscribed on them. Bits of parchment kind of litter the altar and the floor beneath it, just scrawled with all kinds of different messages. And you see that the alcove is big enough, and there's sort of a hook there where you can imagine that the cloak must have been hung there above the stone slab in this alcove. And these barbarians were sort of arguing over who would get to take the cloak.
Is there a visible component about these guys that is, I guess, sort of quote unquote barbarian? Like, are they men, or are they like bucktooth mutants? Like, what are we dealing with here?
They are definitely humans, but they're very large. They're just kind of wearing furs and ratty leather, and if you kind of like look at them, you see that their teeth have been kind of sharpened, maybe filed to points. They have these very jagged, sharp, rotting, just filth-ridden teeth.
Arun is kind of walking through the three that they've dropped, and he kind of stops by the one that was still wearing the cloak, and kind of motions down to it, pokes it with the end of his mace. Do you reckon we should maybe take this with us? If it was worth fighting over.
I didn't think you were the type to be wearing ladies' clothing, but I certainly won't stop you. Could a quick sweep around the perimeter of the room? Do we have any more openings? Do we have anything on the edges, or have we reached our end, or what's our architecture?
It seems like you've reached the end of this sort of series of rooms. There's no obvious ways in or out aside from the door that you just came in. You do notice a few things of interest on the altar as you're kind of looking around. Would you guys mind giving me a couple rolls of a d20, please? One roll each. So, Jeremy, you find yourself on this sort of altar of things. You find this really nice fur cap and a set of really nice gloves. Jeff, you actually find a full quiver of arrows kind of leaned up against this altar. And Hankrin, you find yourself a hand axe that appears to have a blade of ice that never melts. Very, very similar to the ring on your finger.
Well, upon finding that, I'll tow it around, but I don't want to touch it. And just being impatient with the years that have culminated in this experience, I'm going to look around at this scene, and again, I feel like somehow destiny hasn't quite come calling yet. And I'll go ahead and just, I don't know, sort of looking at the ceiling and saying, "Where are you? We've dispatched your minions. We've snoozed your want-to-be worshippers. We don't want your trinkets. We want you. We want the end of the whispers. The end of the oath. Show yourself, you coward, and die again, this time for good."
And you're met with silence as you sort of scream at the ceiling. But then, Hex, there's almost a tug in your mind, a strange sort of ethereal pull on your hair. And you hear this whisper, that same whisper that you remember so vividly from your dreams. "Come find me where you saw me die."
Is there any evidence of these wild men stirring? Bentley, how long does this thaumaturgy of yours last?
It puts them out. It's 8
8
hours.
They're done. They're getting the full REM cycle, man. They're out.
I would like you to use that spell on me sometime.
I've thought about that before, man. Like, if I was a wizard, I'd constantly be like, sleep. 8 hours, boom, I'm good.
It does bring up a good point, though. Should we deal with them, or should we just let them lie for now?
Well, we've no quarrel with them, but I've just had a vision, yelling randomly as I do when I'm frustrated, that he begs us to come where he was killed. Is that where that blade rests? Or I'm not sure. I'm nothing for puzzles and riddles.
And upon hearing that, Bentley would try to like recall in his mind like the runes that he had read on the blade, and try to see if he could recall anything about the tale that had been recanted on the runes, about whether or not that may give him some sort of hint or some sort of realization.
Yeah, you kind of think back to that first chamber and seeing the blade, and you think about how when you first laid eyes on the blade, you saw the man that would become the Frozen King. You saw him die, and you're not sure exactly where that took place. You remember seeing a throne and a crown falling to a stone floor, but you know that you saw him die when you looked upon that blade in that room.
But we've never seen anything like a throne yet. Have we missed a... Let's search these walls. What do you think, gentlemen?
We found one secret behind them so far. Wouldn't surprise me to find a second. It's a good idea.
I agree. And yeah, Marhoon will start. He'll go to a wall and just start inspecting.
Give me wisdom tests, please. So inspecting this room, again, you can see that, you know, the walls are kind of covered in this ice, and you can see the mortared stone beneath the ice where the ice is kind of encroached. You look around the altar, you see that the messages that are written on the altar are sort of like people have come to this tomb to sort of denounce the Frozen King. On all of these little pieces of parchment, there's, you know, words defaming him, you know, denouncing his reign, hoping that he never returns. There's one that mentions his oath. I hope you see your oath unfulfilled for all eternity. But beyond that, it really does seem like this room is sort of like dead end.
What did we miss? I mean, they're piling bones here. These savages are killing each other almost. Well, not almost. Look at this poor fool. He was beaten to death over this bloody cape. Well, is this all there is?
You don't think that maybe he's buried in one of these altars, do you? Or maybe in the room with all the bones?
Bentley kind of like, his eyes kind of go wide for a second as he recalls something. And he says, "The cloak. Can I see the cloak?"
Yeah, Marhoon will kind of use his boot to roll the unconscious guy over that's still wearing it. Be my guess.
And he kind of takes the cloak off of the person, and he wraps it around himself and begins to walk back towards the room that they had come out of. And
as you put the cloak on, you immediately die. No, I'm just kidding. You put the cloak on, and you feel this warmth, like you're sitting in front of a fire. Like the cold has no effect on you now as you don this cloak. You feel as though you're sitting in front of a raging hearth in an inn almost. But you also, as you put it on and you begin walking, you sort of get another flash, another of these waking dreams that you've been experiencing. And you see a human man with this cloak holding the rune blade in front of him. And you see that dais that you saw when you first entered, that sort of circular altar, you see it kind of coming up out of the floor and closing in this kind of almost flower blossom pattern. And the man lays the sword on the altar and says, "May you never find peace, Frozen King." And that's all you see.
And then, kind of shaking off the vision, he actually begins to run back towards the altar. And if his comrades were to follow him, they would see as they were turning the corner, just Bentley's hand going straight for the hilt of the blade that had been on the altar.
Marhoon kind of holds his hand out. "No, lad, what are you doing?" Everything goes into slow motion.
And Bentley, you grasp the hilt. You sort of shove this frozen savage who's, reaching out towards the hilt. You shove him aside. You grab for the sword. Your fingers close around the hilt. Nothing happens. You're able to pick the sword up, though it is incredibly heavy. You can safely touch it, but it doesn't make you any better at holding a sword, especially one of this size. You take it off the altar, and you're holding this sword. And the rings on your hands begin to glow. They hum to life. And these beams of icy white light emit from these rings, crisscrossing at the center of the room. And there's a rumbling. Ice begins falling from the ceiling as the stone dais opens, blossoming like a flower, and begins lowering into the floor, becoming what appears to be a spiral staircase leading down. And as soon as that happens, the rings kind of fade and go out, resuming again their normal appearance.
I've never seen mine do that before. But it seems to have worked. Maybe we've at least got away now. Oh, that's right. I am the one up front. And he kind of hustles past the other two towards the stairs. And shield in front will start downward.
I'll move up past Bentley toward the staircase and give him a look and say, well, that was one hell of a way to try to make 3 friends. Let's do this.
And Bentley, kind of like hunched over, has the flat of the greatsword just up on his shoulder, like using both of his hands on the hilt, basically just to keep it balanced. Like just drops his staff onto the ground doing this, just completely ignoring the fact that he's leaving it behind. And basically with the lantern around his wrist and his 2 hands balancing this massive sword on his tiny frame, begins to just slumping down the stairs, like kind of one heaving step at a time.
You descend the spiral staircase, delving deeper into the frigid darkness. You emerge in a gigantic tomb. There is a fog here, a white fog that covers the floor and crawls up the walls. The walls are that same black ice, jagged and craggy. There's a sickening hum, sort of this white noise at the very edge of your senses that you can hear until you start listening for it, and then it's gone. Just sort of this constant oppressive hum. The air is so cold that it hurts to breathe, except for our friend Bentley here, who feels as though he's sipping a cup of hot cocoa. It's so cold that it almost feels like your eyes are going to freeze shut if you blink. but still you continue forward. The cold in this place is unlike anything you've ever felt before. And as you near what appears to be a large stone sarcophagus, you can hear breathing, deep, rhythmic breathing, rasping. It seems to come from everywhere, from the very walls themselves. And as the three of you inch closer to this sarcophagus, you can see set into alcoves in the walls are the mummified remains of what appear to be the Frozen King's honor guard, each of them wearing armor that is falling apart, wielding rusting, corroded swords, and on each of their hands, a silver ring set with a gemstone of black ice. The breathing continues, and then a voice. You have come, finally, my servants. Descended from my royal guard. You have come and brought the pieces with you. Will you kneel before your Frozen King?
Marhoon kind of stunned into silence for once, kind of looks at his compatriots to see if he can't judge whether their tenacity is intact or not. And he turns and he says, well, you see, I'm an old dwarf, and my knees aren't very good, so if I can, I'd rather remain standing. But thank you all the same. I've already got the king, you see. He's a little more thought out.
Well, for once, I think I'll put my Spartan urges aside and try to sort of take two sort of slinking steps back and get near the edges of this room, and maybe even, I imagine, using this sort of thick fog to my advantage. And since Maroon is basically playing the Leonidas card, I'll just try to slip out of the attention of the room and slip to the edge and knock an arrow and be in position, rather than my usual instinct, which is to shake my fist at the sky. So I'll try to, hopefully just this will put me in position to be behind a target whenever whatever is about to happen happens.
And the other two of you would see Bentley is not quite so confident in opposition as the two of you are. And he kind of takes one step further, closer towards this tomb, and kind of like motioning with his, like tapping his book that's set into his robes with one hand. If I do, can you free me of this curse?
I can free you from all that ails you. Mortality will be but a memory, as it is for me.
And he just looks over towards the other two and just kind of heaving the sword off of his shoulder, just stabs it point down into the ice, just it kind of just cracking into the ground. And he, as he just leaves it to stand there in the ground, just kind of looks over to the two of his companions with just this. He's always been fairly hesitant, but like he looks like pained and anguished as he like looks Maroon just dead in the eyes.
Lad, don't do it. Whatever he's promising you, it's a lie. If he had any powers at all, do you think he'd be stuck in a place like this for eternity? He can't promise you shite. Get yourself together. We need all three of us.
He's called us here. It's just so perfect.
I will train my aim from the grottoed soldiers with great pain over toward Bentley and begin pulling that drawstring.
Think about it. If we finish him off while we're here, if we kill him for good this time, instead of whatever the hell these people did last time, the voices have got to stop. They're coming from here, and we stop it here. We don't stop it by deciding that you're going to press his lips to your ear for the rest of your life. Think about it.
And Bentley just looks with a sigh, and you see one of his legs start to bend. But as he does so, he puts one of his hands under the hilt of the greatsword that's been plunged into the ground now, and just heaves it back up out of the ground, grabbing it with two hands, trying desperately to even hold it up under its weight. And he just, like, with arms trembling and shivering, just looks at you. You better be right.
If I'm not, we'll be dead, and it won't matter.
There's a rumble that kind of begins shaking your feet. Ice drifting from the ceiling. Oh, they speak lies. They speak falsehoods. And in front of the sarcophagus, this form begins to manifest from the fog that is rolling across the floor. You see it first form feet clad in boots, and then legs clad in greaves, up a torso with a breastplate, its chest exposed with a glowing blue heart. You see this cloak of fog drape across him as this spectral frozen king, skeletal and terrible, with a long wispy beard and a crown upon his skull, takes shape in front of you. And then the fog coalesces into a massive maul that he grips with one hand and points at the three of you. If you will not kneel, then you shall die. Let's go ahead and roll for initiative. I keep reaching for my dice, and then I'm like, oh, I don't have to roll. This is wonderful. All right. Beautiful. All right, same initiative as before. So, Bentley and Hex, you guys get to act before the Frozen King does.
Well, I think since I was poised at the ready and Bentley was just putting in that heroic effort to fight off the urge of evil incarnate, I think that gives me the jump. But it looked like the king spotted me, didn't he? He saw all three of us clear as day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's definitely sweeping that glowing blue gaze across all three of you.
Cool. Then I'll stand up from my little hidey hole and take 3 steps toward him like Legolas style and just go for an arrow. And I would like, if possible, if maybe it makes my roll harder, but I'd like to go right for that glowing blue heart.
Yeah, go for
I'd
it.
rather miss then shoot him with a conventional shot. I'm going to try to go right for that gap in the chest plate.
Yeah, go for it.
So is that my normal shot is under a 14? Do I need to do anything harder?
So the Frozen King is actually, so this is going to be interesting. All of the rolls made against the Frozen King or to avoid his attacks are going to be, you're going to add 3 to the roll because he's a difficult opponent. He has a higher HD than you guys have.
Right.
So your rolls are going to be modified by 3, all of them.
Okay. That's 12 modded, so I'm still under by 2.
Perfect. Go ahead and roll for damage.
Yeah. Hey, 4.
Very nice.
Woo! That's the way to step up.
What does that first shot look like as it strikes him?
Well, I think the key is I want to walk. You know this like sort of SWAT technique where you walk right toward your target as you release. I want to make a statement to this guy. So maybe I didn't hit the absolute core of his chest, but the arrow plumbs between a few of those ribs, and I'm 3 steps closer to him, right there with the bow. So not playing this cowering role, but if he sees me, then there's no point hiding. I want to be right in his face.
That's awesome. Okay, Bentley, you're up.
So Bentley, kind of heaving the sword up onto his shoulder with one arm, pulls the book back out in his other arm and kind of just letting it open. It almost opens automatically to a certain page. And on the page, anybody who could see the picture as he holds it up would just see all these birds and an image of a person. And suddenly that wound where the ice creature had slashed him before starts to bleed again. But as the blood kind of pours from the wound, it begins to like come off of him into that black smoke again. But as it goes from that, normally it's that thick, inky, black, dark magic, but suddenly the runes on the sword kind of whoosh, glow with a flash of light, and the glowing kind of sphere around him turns into a bird, almost like a crow made of black energy, and then suddenly it bursts into a gleaming orange flaming bird that begins to fly around in front of him, protecting him from the icy blasts soon to come as he casts shield.
So awesome. That's so dope. I love the, like, whenever you describe a spell, I'm like just waiting to hear which one it is because I'm just like, oh, I don't know what this could be. All right. It's Frozen King time, baby. So the Frozen King begins descending the stairs from his sarcophagus. You see that he's sort of half corporeal, like he is clearly physically there, like you can feel his weight as he comes down the steps. He's just this massive creature, but his form kind of wisps left and right as he's sort of coalesced out of this fog that sort of permeates this room. And he comes down the stairs, the maul kind of resting on his shoulder, and he just holds out a hand and says, "Rise, my servants." And 3 skeletal minions break free of the ice and begin descending from their alcoves. From your vantage point, Hex, as you see them leave their alcoves, you see that each one of these alcoves, behind the skeletal minion that comes out, you can see these sort of like tall jars behind each of them in these alcoves, just kind of sitting there, almost displayed in the icy alcoves. These skeletal minions, there's 3 of them, come down the stairs. 1 makes for each of you. So I'll need each of you to give me a strength test to avoid their damage as they swing these like brittle, rusty swords at you. These guys, by the way, are not modifying your rolls, just the Frozen King. So just flat rolls for these ones. Okay, if you failed, you're going to be taking 2 damage as they slash at you with these rusty weapons. Remember those armor points, too.
Yeah, so as this skeletal form goes to slash, suddenly instead it's met with just a flurry of sparks and smoke and flame as this bird that had been floating around him flies up into the blade, smashing it away as his arm is knocked back, as I'm going to use my 2 armor points to to not take damage there.
Very cool. Okay. That brings us to Maroon.
Maroon kind of sees the situation unfolding in front of him, and he's always kind of cautious in battle. He kind of waits to kind of see how things play out, get a read of the land before he goes in. And now that he sees these servants kind of joining their master, he kind of nods, knowing what he needs to do. And he kind of looks down at his shield, where it's emblazoned with the huge holy symbol of Dorkirk, his god of protection. And he kind of looks down, and in Dwarven, he kind of whispers to it, "All right, now don't let me down in front of the boys. We've got to do it, and we're going to do it big." And he moves forward and holds his shield aloft, and he says, "By the power of Dorkirk, the god of protection amongst dwarves, men, and elves, turn your asses around before I'm forced to stomp them into dust." He's going to attempt to banish undead.
Awesome. That's great, because I want to see how this works. So you're going to test your wisdom, and you're going to add the creature's HD to the roll. So that will be, they're just a 1 HD creature. So just modify your roll by 1.
So if I'm attempting to do this to them and the Frozen King as well.
Yeah, so if you're going to do that, then you'll make 2 separate rolls.
Okay.
1 for them and 1 for the Frozen King.
All right. So 1 in the first one, I add a 1 to it.
Yes.
Because, okay. Okay, +1 is a 7 out of 15.
Perfect. Okay, so you banish these 3 skeletal minions. Go ahead and give me a roll of 2d4 to see how many rounds they're going to be banished.
Wow, nice. 7.
7. Okay, yeah. So for 7 rounds, they will only spend their movement trying to get away specifically from you. So they are fleeing from your divine light. Now, let's go ahead and try it on the Frozen King. That'll modify your roll by 3.
3. Okay. Come on, baby.
Come on, Maroon.
I rolled a 4 plus 3 is another 7 out of 15.
Beautiful.
Again.
Very nice. Okay, roll 2d4.
All right. 2, 3. Okay, so 3 total.
Okay. Perfect. So 3 rounds or moments, rather, the Frozen King, 7 for his minions to be banished. And I imagine that, this light kind of floods the room. It's almost blinding. And what happens is the Frozen King kind of, he puts up his hand to kind of shield himself from this light, but the light kind of blasts through his sort of incorporeal form, and you see him kind of blasted apart, wisps of him kind of flying away. And he's almost kind of this spectral, almost ghost with this skull-like face, and he begins kind of flying, trying to get away from you, flying around the room, trying to reform himself from the fog.
And I imagine the radiant light off of my shield actually kind of maybe where it splits into different beams and hits this black ice that's formed on the walls and stuff, that it actually does melt little divots into it as it kind of eats away at this evil, this ice has just soaked up evilness for so long.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that.
Maroon
Very cool.
Reaches down and kisses his shield. He says, "Good boy. All right." And then he turns to the others and he says, "Now, get them now. We're going to finish this."
Yeah, and that brings us back around to Bentley and Hex.
Well, I see that the Frozen King is taken aback a little bit. And but he's sort of swirling and reforming, right? He's kind of not really fully there. But the other guys are more like undead, right? They're like zombies.
Yeah, they're like skeletons. Yeah, they're straight up just like right there.
Okay, so I will well, I'm not sure how time is in the Black Hack, but I'm sure it's small enough. But I will before I draw another arrow, I'll try to spot those glowing blue eyes, because I know that if he's still alive, those glowing blue eyes are in this room. I'm going to look into those glowing blue eyes and reach up, take off the ring, throw it on the altar, spin around, and take an arrow at one of the urns in the grotto.
Very nice. Go ahead and give me an attack roll.
Oh, it's a 16. That's a miss by 2.
You see your arrow just kind of ping, bounce off the back of the alcove.
And for usage, I have a 1, which is not good.
Yeah, so that means your quiver starting to empty a little bit, so you're going to go down to the next die type. So if you got a D10 there, you're down to D8.
Roger that.
Starting to run low on arrows, man. All right, that is Hex, so now it's Bentley.
So Bentley, seeing the Frozen King's form distorted by this holy light, is actually kind of bolstered by this divine energy that's ringing out from Maroon, and he begins to, as best as he can, almost half hobble and shuffle towards the spirit of the Frozen King. As he kind of walks towards it, he runs his hand along the runes on the blade. The story, the tales of your demise, your fall. The story will be retold again. As he goes forward with all of it that he can, is going to try to heft the great sword at this spirit and hope for the best, which he has no training in, no combat ability, and he has 10 strength. So
all right, so here's what we're going to do. Basically, you're going to be rolling at disadvantage because you're not proficient with the weapon. You're also going to be adding the +3 because you're attacking the Frozen King. You're also going to be adding +2 because it's a heavy weapon, so it's harder to swing, but it hits a little harder. So you're going to be modifying your roll by 5.
all right, +5
With disadvantage. Yep. So good luck,
get
man.
a 9 or less.
You're like double ones. Come on.
Come on.
Mage great sword.
Well, the first one was 8 on the die, so that's a 13. So don't even need to roll the second one.
So I imagine you kind of charge up at this spirit and you just swing, and the sword you connect, but it kind of just uselessly goes through the fog, and just you see him kind of split apart for a second and then reform instantly after the sword kind of cuts through him.
Yeah, and I imagine as the sword kind of swings its forward arc, the weight now off of his shoulder and out forward actually just like throws him down like towards the ground as this massive sword just drags him down.
Awesome. All right. It is now the Frozen King's turn. He is going to spend it running away from the dwarf, from the big scary dwarf. So you see him again kind of float to the other side of the tomb, and you can see him starting to take shape again. And you actually see that he's pulling slabs of ice from the wall. You see ice kind of cracking and forming onto him, forming pieces of his body, almost like armor plating on his sort of foggy form. So he's got 2 more rounds to go on his banishment. So that brings us back around to Marhoon.
Marhoon is he's going to see this happening with the Frozen King, and he's just going to kind of mumble, "Oh, no, you don't. No, no, no." And he's going to run kind of, out of breath over to him and try to kind of juke around Bentley a little bit, leaving the comments about that attack later till they're drinking later on. He'll chastise him then. But runs up, brings his shield and mace to bear. I think his shield is probably not still sending off beams of light, but it's glowing almost as if it were laying out in the sunlight. Like it hasn't quite given up the sheen yet. So he's going to run up and swing his mace at the Frozen King and attempt to do some damage. Yes, 2 out of 13.
Beautiful. Give me some damage.
Oh, it would have been a 5 total with the +3. Sorry.
Okay, cool.
Yes, a 6 again.
Very nice. So what I need you to do, Maroon, is give me a Constitution test, please.
And I have advantage on those because I'm a dwarf. Or no, because I'm a cleric.
Because you are a cleric.
Cool. It's good because I'm going to need it. And this is also with the +3, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Good question.
Cool. I got on the die a 3 and a 14. So my total is a 6, which is my con score.
Perfect. Okay.
I think I actually failed though, right? Because
If you're equal to it, then yes, you fail. Yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately.
Yeah. So you, as your weapon connects with the Frozen King, and you, even though you're kind of attacking his sort of wispy form, you feel it connect with that icy heart at the center of this form. You feel your mace connect, and then this sort of like blast of cold energy emits from the Frozen King as you connect with him, and cold washes over you for 3 damage. And remember those armor points.
Yeah, my shield has 3 points left on it, so I think I'm going to lose 2 points from my shield. Wait, nothing happens to it when it runs out, does it?
No, you can still have it. It just it doesn't break or anything. The warrior actually has the ability where he can choose to break his shield, which is kind of cool. But the cleric, if you run out of armor points, your shield, you're just not very good at using your shield anymore.
Okay, then yeah, I'm gonna duck behind my shield as I see it. I catch like the first parts of it, and then I put my shield up, and the rest of it kind of spills around my shield, almost like freezing it, almost like liquid nitrogen, just like hitting the edges of my shield.
Very cool. Okay, that brings us back to the top of the initiative, to Bentley and Hex.
Wow. Awesome turns, gentlemen. Well, I'm torn. Good grief. I mean, I was trying to dispatch these servants, but then seeing Maroon, I mean, him taking his shield basically being cracked and frozen, and then him taking another damage on top of that. Good grief. What do I do here? It just doesn't, it seems foolish to be plumbing this guy with arrows. I want to end this. What's the sort of spatial relationship of the king and Maroon and me? Like, is Maroon between us, or are we kind of spread out? What do you see in your mind, Matt?
I imagine that Maroon and Bentley are kind of up a little bit on this sort of raised surface where the sarcophagus is sort of battling the Frozen King's wisp sort of over there. So I imagine that they're kind of between you, but because they're battling and they're kind of moving around, you can get a clear shot if you just like wait for a second and then let it loose.
All right, I'm going to trust Maroon. So I'm going to turn and I'm going to go back to, I really think there's somehow this burial magic is at the roots of this problem. And I'm not quite ready to swan dive into the king. So I think I'll turn back and I'll take another arrow shot, just like I did before at one of those urns in the grotto.
Go for it.
Hey, there we go. That's a 5.
Very cool. So what happens is the arrow connects with the urn. You see the urn just kind of shatter, and this kind of like ash kind of falls out of the urn. One of the minions, the skeletal minions that was kind of running away, instantly stops and falls, just breaks into a bunch of pieces as you destroy his urn. And the Frozen King, you see light just flare in his eyes. And he kind of like slumps to the ground, this wispy, foggy form, leaning against his sarcophagus. He is now stunned for this round, and any attacks against him will have advantage.
Way to go, Brandon.
Come on. Here we go.
And that's Bentley.
So that'll cancel out my disadvantage. But I still have +5.
Now you just got to deal with that +5, exactly.
That's modified with a 19. So against just seeing, I imagine that he tries to lift the sword for a swing to do like a horizontal slash, but he just like can't even get it off the ground. Like he tries to swing with the sword, but just like ends up just like twisting his shoulder as he like tries to spin around, and the blade just kind of drags, scraping against the ice floor as he just kind of grunts in pain and shame as he just tries to bring this sword up against this stunned king, but can't.
All right, Frozen King's turn. He is stunned. He's down to 1 round of banishment, and the remaining skeletal minions are down to 5 rounds. The skeletal minions have sort of reached the end of the tomb, and they're just kind of like cowering at the other end of the tomb, just kind of like hiding their eyes from the glow that is still emanating from that shield. All right, that brings us around to Marun.
Okay, so seeing that so far it seems to be working, he's just going to keep it up. He's just going to do more of the same, or at least attempt to. He's going to rear back once again and aiming for the same spot that he just hit with his mace before. He's going to try to strike for the same exact place. An 8 plus 3 is 11 out of 13. Cool. All right. D6. 5. Murder.
Very nice. Killing it with that damage, man. And again, I'm going to need a contest from you.
13 out of 6.
So that's going to be 3 damage from that blast of cold that just floods out of the Frozen King's form.
Yeah, my chain still has 5 points, so I'm going to let it eat the 3, and that leaves me with 2 more armor points before I start getting back into my health.
Yeah, okay, beautiful. All right. We're back to Bentley and Hex.
Oh, wow, that was fast. Okay, well, again, awesome. I just want to say that real quick. Okay, I'm going to spin. I'm just trying to, looks like my allies have this situation on lockdown. So I'm just going to stay calm, go over to the next urn, and loose again. 4. Hit.
Beautiful. So again, you hit this canopic jar, it shatters, ash falls out, and you see another of these skeletal minions just and just like the bonds that are holding the bones together just crack and break, and it crumbles into a pile of dust. And again,
looks like the arrow shattered too when it hit the urn on this shot.
Uh-oh.
I rolled a 1 on my usage.
Ooh, down to a D6.
So yeah, as I reach back, I realize like, oh, there's like 2 or 3 of them in there.
Yeah. You're going to be like Hawkeye in the Avengers. Like you go back and you're like, oh, there's no arrows back there. Shit. So there's one more skeletal minion kind of cowering in the corner, banished. The Frozen King, he looks as if he's just recovering, kind of getting back up. You see more ice, more fog coalescing into his form. He looks bigger and badder than he did before. It's like Secret of the Ooze when Super Shredder comes out. Like he's just like a little bit bigger, a little bit meaner. And then the canopic jar shatters, and again, his eyes go ablaze, and he slumps against the sarcophagus, stunned yet again for 1 round. Now we are back to Marun.
Well, I still have I haven't gone yet.
Did I skip you, Bentley?
You skipped me.
Dang,
Just say,
man.
you know what?
Go ahead.
That's just Bentley with a sword. We're just
Bentley trying to wield a sword meant for somebody 4 times as strong as he is.
All right, go ahead, man.
That's a 14. So it's still over. As he just actually yells out, just like, ah, trying to like bring the sword up, and just like, I imagine like as this jar breaks, the Frozen King actually just like stumbles back a bit from the energy, and the sword just like clanks down on the ground right in front of him, and just like lands on the ground, just point sticking in, as he just like looks up straight into the face of this Frozen King.
Awesome. Yeah, Frozen King's turn. He is now unbanished, but still stunned, and the remaining skeleton has 4 rounds of banishment left. That brings us to Marun.
At this point, Marun, he just can't bite his tongue anymore. And he looks over at Bentley and he says, "Are you sure you're doing that right? Maybe you should just lie it down. You can kick him or spit on him instead. That it may be more accurate." And he's going to continue to step forward, even though Bentley can see that Marun is starting to get icicles on his beard, and he's getting kind of like frostbitten, like texture on his cheeks and the big bulbous nose that he's got. But as of now, at least, Marun isn't feeling it. He's on cloud 9, he thinks, and he's going to keep swinging away. I rolled a 20.
Oh, all right. So give me a roll of the usage die for that weapon. That'll be a D10.
Okay. A 3.
Trying out some homebrew.
Got a 3.
So your weapon's all good, but you like severely miss. Swing, maybe you're off balance a little bit, and the mace kind of collides with the edge of that sarcophagus. You see stone kind of break off of it as your arc goes wide. Okay, that brings us back around to Bentley and Hex.
All right, King, if that's what you ever were, you'll have to do this yourself. I'll go for the third urn. Ah, it's a 15, a miss. And boy, this is kind of getting clutch. Here's my usage. It's a 5.
Beautiful.
So I hold on the D6, right?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, unless you roll a 1 or a 2, and then you go down to the dreaded D4.
Ooh. Okay, well,
Yeah.
Swing and a miss for me then.
Yep. So the arrow, again, bounces off the back of the alcove. Bentley, what about you?
Quick question first. This sarcophagus that's on the ground now, is there still a Frozen King body inside that, or is this incorporeal form the entirety of him now?
You can assume that his remains are in the tomb. The sarcophagus appears to be sealed and not opened. He's somehow sort of manifesting a semi-physical form outside of the tomb, but you can assume that, he's in there somewhere.
With a quick glance, probably not very effective at actually determining this. How strong does the top of this sarcophagus look?
It's like,
If I were to say, use the weight of a greatsword to try to plunge through it,
it's
underneath would be within possibility.
It's pretty thick stone. You imagine that if you came in here with like a pickaxe, you might be able to bust through it, but like the edge of a sword, you're just going to dull that sword hitting the stone with it, you can imagine. I mean, you don't know a ton about swords, but just based on like logic, you're just like, no, I'm not going to be able to get through the stone with this.
Yeah, so he kind of like looks at the sarcophagus, just kind of like, no. And then like looks at Maroon, with just like, I don't know what to do. He actually walks up beside Maroon, and he goes and puts both of his hands on the greatsword. But as he takes one off for a moment, and he drops the sword onto the ground in front of him, and he takes off the cloak and he throws it onto Maroon with or without his consent, and just says, I give in. You're better at this than me. I get it. Finish him.
Awesome. All right, that brings us to the Frozen King's turn. He finally coalesces a new form for himself. Part fog, part spectral skeleton, part ice from the walls. He is a nightmare to look upon, barely humanoid at this point. He hefts this huge maul and brings it over his head, and he's going to try and bring it down on you, Bentley, as he says, you are not worthy of that blade. So what I'll need from you is a strength test modified by 3 to try to avoid it.
Funny.
No.
20? Oh, no. All right. So, Bentley, you are going to take 4 damage as this maul collides with you.
And as the maul collides with him, his head collides with the ground as he just falls limp.
What do we got on death rules in the Black Hack, Matt?
All right, so you are now out of action. You are unconscious and cannot make any actions. When the fight is over or when you're out of danger, you got to roll on a table to see what happens. So right now, it's not, no one can tell if you're dead or alive, and until they heal you or until the fight is over, they can't be sure. The Frozen King is also going to, as he brings them all down, he extends his hand out and he says, "Rise, servants." And you see 3 more skeletons kind of emerge from the alcoves as he uses his summoning powers. That'll bring us around to Maroon.
So Maroon sees this happen, steps away from him, and he cries out, "No!" And he runs forward. Being a cleric of a god of protection, other people are not supposed to fall before him. Not on his team, not on his watch. So he's beside himself now. And he drops his mace almost in a mirrored fashion. He drops his tenets of faith. His belief in not wielding bladed weapons as a man of the cloth. And he feels a familiar sense of rage kind of boiling beneath the surface. And he bends down and picks up the greatsword now. Not being necessarily trained in this, but knowing that it has something to do with this bastard. That it's tied to him, and it's tied to his death. So he has now chosen his instrument that he is either going to end this with, or that he is going to die with in his hand. And he is going to charge forward and swing the sword. Oh, that's not good. So I got a 17 and a 19.
If we were playing 5th edition, that would be wonderful.
I'm telling you, man, I'd be killing it.
So you kind of charge towards the Frozen King and you swing at him maybe a couple times, bringing this great sword around. And he just sort of like dissipates and reforms, dissipates and reforms, just sort of dodging your attacks. And the son of a bitch laughs. You see his skull just clacking open. You are just as unworthy as the conjurer to wield that blade, dwarf. And he again brings them all up, ready for an attack. But that brings us to the top of the initiative with Hex.
Well, when I see what seems to be the little guy in our group go down, I'm not gonna meet my end on hiding behind a bow. So I imagine these skeletons, I think there's an infinite supply of them is what it feels like to me. They're closing in all around in these arms. It's like the end of the Thriller video. And I'm gonna walk away from that. I'm gonna drop the bow. I'm gonna take the quiver off and throw the quiver aside. I'm going to pull the short sword up around, pull it out of the scabbard, and just throw the scabbard aside. Go straight toward the Frozen King. I don't need a damn magical sword to finish you, coward. And I'll go for the shot. There! It's +3, right? So 8 + 3 is 11. I'm 1 under my strength, which is 12.
Beautiful.
So that's a D6 on damage. Oh, it's cattywampus.
There we go. What is that?
Out of the rolling box.
What is
maximum.
that? That's amazing. What does that look like as you strike a good blow against the Frozen King?
It's that moment when Predator takes all his shit off. I'm done with the tactics. I'm done with all of this. If we're all just gonna get dragged down into hell with the Frozen King, then so be it. But I'm not gonna do it at 20 feet away. I want to look right into those eyes and dig that sword around in that rib cage. And if we're just going to go down together, then that's how it's going to be.
Hell yeah. I love it. All right. It is now the Frozen King's turn. He, hold up. I need you to make a Constitution test, please.
Yeah, I got to get the chill on me, don't I?
Yep, you do.
This is also my worst stat, so this is pretty exciting.
Perfect. I'm so glad that everyone had such low constitution.
Yeah, I got that baller 8.
Yeah.
And I roll an 18.
Oh boy. All right.
Oh.
3 damage as a blast of cold air just hits you, rocking you back on your heels.
It's 3 damage, right?
3, yeah.
Okay, I'll burn 1 armor and take 2. So the crystals spread into the gambeson, which is like a cube stitched, doublet.
Yeah.
And I just imagine the front curling outward and it just brittling away and crumbling away, and the rest of the cold goes right into the. So we're heart to heart.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a great show, by the way.
Oh man. All right. The Frozen King spins this maul around, bringing it down on Maroon, again focusing on the wielder of the blade. So Maroon, I'm going to need a strength test, please.
The +3, that's a 16 out of 13.
Ooh, boy. All right. That is 4 damage coming at you from this massive maul.
Does the giant hammer have the cold on it as well?
It does not. It appears to just be a really nice big old hammer. I'm assuming you failed that, Jeremy, based on your facial expression.
With that, was there a second roll that I needed?
No, I'm just making sure that you did indeed take that damage.
Oh yeah, yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, my armor points are all gone, my shield points are all gone, and I've got 3 HP left.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, this is getting down to the wire, guys. It is your turn, Maroon. You see the skeletal minions using their move action to come up. They're now standing sort of at the bottom of the stairs, holding these corroded weapons, ready to jump in at a moment's notice. But as of yet, they haven't reached the melee. So, Maroon, you're up.
So, Maroon was forced to take a knee from that blow. And he gets up kind of slowly and groans. And he realizes that his shield is completely broken. So he just drops it next to him. And, well, I guess he actually probably did that if he was wielding a 2-handed weapon. Anywho. He kind of coughs up some blood. Kind of spits it out on the ground. And there's some of it streaking the white of his beard. And he kind of looks up the Frozen King, cracks his neck one way and then the other. And he says, that was a good hit. It hurt a lot. And you and I have gotten off on the wrong foot. But if you're going to be slinging insults around, you should probably at least remember that moments ago it was ye that was pissing yourself and flying around this place, scared of my god, not the other way around, you shithead. You can keep giving your cold damage all you want. I'll freeze here while I'm whooping your ass. And he's going to swing again with disadvantage.
Come on, Maroon.
Disadvantage is a 14 out of 13.
Oh, that's so painful. So painful. Oh, man. All right. So that brings us back around to the top of the initiative with Hex.
So if I'm toe-to-toe now with the king, as he likes to call himself, I'm free of the ring. I got a feeling this would be a pretty good death if we really do end it right here. So just dug this sword right into the rib cage. I'm going to extract the sword, and even though it's like all frosty and sticky and stuck in all these crystals coming out of there, I'll throw the sword aside. And then I'm just going to go straight up, reach in and try to grab that glowing heart. And I don't know what happens or why, but it seems like the source of his power. I'm just going to try to shove my arm in there.
All right. Give me a improvised attack roll there.
So does that change my? That's still under strength, right? With the plus
Yes,
3.
still under strength, and you'll just do the D4 damage or
low
whatever
damage,
your
right.
improvised damage is.
Oh, not even close. Totally failed. So my knuckles are just cracking against all these frozen ribs. But I just want him to stay focused on me. Like, if we're gonna go to hell, let's go to hell together. It'll be better than what I've been through.
Yeah, and he definitely, like, as you sort of force your hand in there, he definitely, like, takes notice and kind of whirls and looks at you, his glowing blue eyes boring into you. And it is now his turn. He's going to use this maul on you, so give me a strength test.
All right. Nice. With the mod, 7. Totally made it.
Yeah, so he swings with the maul, and I imagine that you just kind of, like, you still got your hand in there, and you just kind of duck, weave, and it just, like, slams into the ground beside you.
Yeah.
All right. Poor Bentley is on the ground, bleeding. So now it's Marun's turn.
So Marun kind of, now that the fight has turned a little away from him and it seems to be have focused on Hex, kind of looks down at this sword in his hands, and he kind of collects himself for a moment. He says, "What the hell am I doing? I don't know how to wield one of these things. That's a piece of shit." And he goes over and picks up his mace, and then he's like, "Aye, that's better. That's got a better weight to it." And he'll come back in, and he's going to try what he knows. And got a 16 out of 13.
Time for some new dice. Again, you swing, and he just disappears and comes back into view. Okay, Hex, you're up. You see the skeleton minions start to come up the stairs, holding shields and swords, sort of closing in, pinning you between the Frozen King and them. You're sort of sandwiched in between undead creatures at this point. But you're up, Hex.
I hate doing the same thing twice, but by God, I got to. I'm gonna go for it again. I'm gonna try to reach the fuck in. If you'll pardon my French. Here we go. Oh, not even close. 16 modified. Cracking my, probably broke my wrist trying to reach into this guy's rib cage. But I would at least imagine fumbling myself forward, just basically bear hugging all up in his business. I just want to stop the tactics and keep his eyes on me.
Totally. And he's sort of like just focused on you at this point. His skull face is just mere inches away from yours, just glaring down at you. And his, he does the Skeletor, like the skull just opens up and he's just kind of screaming at you in this inhuman wail as you try and drive your hand into his ribcage. He's going to do another attack with the maul, just kind of bringing it down directly in front of him. So go ahead and give me that strength test.
Okay, there's the strength check again. Super miss, 17.
Oh boy. So that is going to be 3 damage from that maul.
3 damage, so got 1 armor left. I'll burn that and go down to 3 HP. Hey, I got 3 HP, guys, and I'm climbing all over the guy the game named after. This can't be good.
Oh, no. All right. That brings us back to Marun.
All right. So Marun is going to he looks down and he notices his broken shield. And he feels ashamed that he thought that he could do this without his god, without Dorkirk. And he kind of fights the sensation of tears kind of welling up inside of himself as this crisis kind of plays out in his mind. And he turns and he's nodding and he says, "You're right. I should have never turned my back. I should never have turned my eyes from you. You're right. Dorkirk, hear me now. We need you more than ever. These lads don't know it, but I do, as I've known it before. Come to me now. Give me your strength and show me what it is that you can do. Finish this bastard off. Do it through me, and I will forever be your servant. Humble and strong. I rolled a 2 out of 13.
Beautiful. Give me some damage.
All right. A 3.
You smash into the Frozen King, connecting solidly with that mace. And you almost see a glimmer on that mace, almost a glow to it, as your god is known. There's a burst of sort of radiant energy as you collide with his ribcage, and as you do so, that icy heart breaks free and comes loose in Hex's as his fist kind of closes on it, and he yanks it out of the back of the Frozen King's ribcage, and it's just kind of smoking and glowing in his hand. The Frozen King reels his head back, and light erupts forth from his eyes and his mouth. You see the skeletal minions coming up the stairs immediately just turn into ash and dust as the power controlling them dissipates. The Frozen King slumps against the sarcophagus and turns into fog. The ice of his armor begins melting. He lessens and lessens and lessens until there's only a skull left. And the skull gives out a single cry, and then it too turns into ash and blows away. An iron crown clangs onto the stone. The heart in your hand, Hex, glows, and it's cold. It's almost burning your hand. It's so cold. And you hear this hum, and you see the rune blade glowing a fierce blue in response to the icy heart.
I'll look to my rune, lay my hand down on the stone. End it now. But I won't let go. I think Maroon understands what I mean has to be done here.
Maroon kind of reaches up and wipes the back of his hand, coming away with no small amount of blood from his nose and his mouth. And he kind of drops his mace down and scoops up this greatsword again, dragging it behind him, not wielding it as a weapon anymore. Now it is simply a tool. The tool that was designed for a specific purpose. And he understands that now. He's not going to rely on it. He's going to let Dorkirk do his bidding through him with this blade. And he brings it up behind his back. And he looks at Hex and he says, "I'm sorry, lad." And he brings it down on Hex's wrist and the sword, and the heart.
The blade slices through the heart like it was made out of butter. And it slices through Hex's hand almost just as easy. Basically severing his hand right down the middle, chopping off all of his fingers except for his thumb. The blade is so cold that it sort of like instantly freezes and clots the blood. But the pain is intense. And as the heart falls into two pieces, it too begins to melt and drips down the side of the sarcophagus. Bentley, I will need a roll of a d6 from you.
I already rolled.
What'd you get?
You want me to just describe it? So as your eyes in the comm turn to Bentley, you just see him lying there on the ground, completely motionless. And if you were to look closer, you wouldn't see any movement even of breath on his body. As he just lies there, the ice slowly creeping around his hand. And then you see from within his front pocket of his cloak movement as the cloak around him in front of his chest begins to move and ripple for a moment. But what you mistook for his movement was actually the book that has fallen out of his pocket as he lies there. And you just see the black tome begin to become overtaken with ice and then glow with this blue, and the book itself erupts into blue flames of pure cold as the book is completely destroyed by this icy magic. And as the book burns and freezes at the same time, you see Bentley grow pale, and the movement stops.
The dreaded 6. That was beautiful, man. Bentley is most definitely dead. Hex, your hand is a ruin. But you two survivors, you feel kind of a strange tickling sensation, and you look down, and Morrow, you see that your ring is sort of dissipating. It's degrading rapidly, turning into ash. And Hex, you can see where you dropped your ring. You can see it doing the same thing. And even on Bentley's body, his ring too disappears. He finally finds the peace that he sought in death. And all of you feel a weight that you didn't know was there your entire life. You three, descendants of the Frozen King's royal guard and bearers of the rings that marked you as such, you finally feel the presence of the Frozen King leave you for the first time in your life. And that is where we will end Oath of the Frozen King, brought to you by the Black Hack.
Absolutely beautiful, Matt. That was fantastic, man.
Thank you, guys. You guys absolutely killed it. There was just so much good role play in this session. It was amazing. I had so much fun. Just a huge shout out for you guys for taking risks and being creative and just like trying a bunch of shit that I could not have anticipated. So that's just wonderful. It's my favorite thing to do as a dungeon master. So.
Well, we're gonna have to raise a proper tomb for Bentley, a proper grave, and a week of drinking.
It's now the tomb of the great sword wielding conjurer,
and we'll drink warm drinks.
He tried so hard.
Oath of the Frozen
To
Bentley.
the last breath, he wielded the sword.
He tried. He was trying so hard to be a Final Fantasy character.
Yeah, it turns out people don't use gigantic swords for a reason.
Yeah, right.
No, but that was a lot of fun, man. And I know I helped write the adventure kit, but I'm still just like every time I run it, I'm like, man, that was so easy. Like I love it. So that was great. So I'm going to turn it over to these guys they can do their closing remarks and plug anything they want to plug, and then we'll go ahead and call it a night. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we're going to go ahead and go opposite the way we did introductions, and we'll start with Jeremy.
Hey everybody, once again, my name is Jeremy. I've had an absolute blast. I haven't had the chance to play Oath of the Frozen King yet. I've run it twice, and it was really nice to actually have the chance to not only run through it, but also to run through it under one of the original creators. That's always a specific kind of blessing, I think. And yeah, I mean, Jeff and Brandon, like I've played with Jeff several times before, and he's one of my favorite players. He just brings, especially those spell descriptions, man. You just nail those every time. And Brandon, I haven't had the chance to play with you yet, but it was a fantastic first encounter, and I'll do it again in a heartbeat. So thank you guys very, very much. That's all I've got. And thank you, Matt, for letting me be a part of this.
Absolutely, man. Always a pleasure to have you. All right, Jeff, go ahead.
Oh man, yeah, it's just wow. That was such a fun session to play in. The adventure kit, obviously it speaks for itself. It's amazing. Like I've gotten to play it a good handful of times now across different play tests and different iterations of it. And every single time it's just been such a fun encounter to play through. So that's just like, keep it up. If it's like, you could, even if you were just to release it as is, it would be fantastic. So I can't wait to see what the heck is going to happen when the full book actually comes out. Like, I'm super excited for it. And man, this system, I gotta say, I really like this system. Like, I'm definitely going to be running some more of this. It's just such a fun session to play in. Thank you to Jeremy and to Matt and to Hankerin and everybody for being a part of that. That was a blast. I'm Jeff in Counterbalance. If you want to check out any of my stuff, I'm going to have some games coming up on there soon that Jeremy will be in, actually. And yeah, just keep up the good work with this, guys. It's top-notch stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's good to hear. Like, I know, like, a few of you have played, like, in Oath of the Frozen King or even run it before, and I think it's cool that, like, you can still come at it and still be surprised by things that happen, just because, you know, everyone runs it their own way and everyone kind of twists it and adds different things in and stuff. So I think that's really cool. So, all right. And last but certainly not least, hankering for an ale of Drunkens and Dragons.
Hey-o. So first of all, you guys are super awesome, super fun to play with you guys. Jeremy, Jeff, as always. Jeremy, nice to play with you for the first time. And I think my closing remarks are like, you guys know me. I'm always trying to sort of professor this whole thing that we do. And there's a parallel between what we just did and that fantastic Tomb That Walks session that we did, which I think is the magic that is sort of starting to evolve in this generation that we're in, which we're like in the afterglow of 5e, where things start to get interesting. And I think the reason that that is interesting, maybe Matt, you clued in on it a little bit by using Black Hack to do this. I think it shows that what is getting more and more interesting about playing these days is not the sort of the wonder at how all the gears link together. It's more the wonder at how easy it's starting to be to interact with new and interesting people. And just like in Tomb That Walks, if you really were to break it down into notes, it was probably like one little page of bullet notes to make that great night. And I felt like tonight was also what, like 6 or 7 details. I mean, very tight little piece of prep. Yeah, look at that. And I think what's great about this is we're reaching this generation now where that is getting out of our way. We've put so much time into this that we can get all the awesome without all that stuff being in our way. And this was one more case that just proved it, because so few rolls, and yet, man, everything was hanging on those rolls just like it should be. So excellent masterclass, as always, Click. It was an honor to play. It was really fun to play with you guys. I can't wait for what we do next and what happens next.
Absolutely. And thank you, man. Always an honor to play with you as well. And I can't wait to play in one of your games, man. We still need to get that going, because I want to play under you as a player. I think that'd be really fun. So anyway, thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank these guys for playing. They did an awesome job. Definitely go check out their channels. I think I put links down in the description. I think I did that. I think I did. Yeah. I actually did that. Go in the description of this video, and there are links to all of their channels. Go subscribe and check out their stuff. Check out their games. They're all awesome. So thank you, everyone. Take care, and happy gaming all.